Wolfpack, what is going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Roto Street, RotoStreetJournal.com. We breed and feed you fantasy wolves. Here with a pop-up Friday stream, we hit the running game upgrades last Tuesday, hitting all the veterans that had won. We wanted to make sure to just get through all these veteran risers in 1 week, though. It started to feel a little stale if we had it drift into next week. So now we're going into the passing games, the quarterbacks, receivers, and tight ends who got either big bumps up or big bump down the fantasy rankings following the NFL draft. And that could look a number of different ways, whether people avoided competition at the receiver and tight end position, whether quarterbacks got new weapon upgrades, whether the line has been beefed up. There's so many different ways that people could gain value and then conversely lose it with added competition, not getting weaponry additions that we may have expected, and those different things. So we're going to dive right on into a big winner, and that's Jameson Williams alongside Sam Laporta. This is a good, solid fantasy environment overall. The Lions were 5th in points, 27.4 per game, 3rd in total plays, 66.8, 9th in total pass attempts per game, 35.9, and 3rd, very efficient in their passing game, 3rd in pass yards, despite only being 9th in attempts, 259.7. So we've got a nice ripe environment and no real new mouths added. And earlier in the offseason, we had Dan Campbell say Jameson Williams will, quote unquote, push to be a full-time starter. I know when we discussed this earlier, a lot of people were like, oh, that's a huge win for him. And I know me and Mo were kind of like, pushing to be a full-time starter, this round one high draft capital, freakish athletes only pushing to be a full-time starter doesn't seem like a ringing endorsement to me. But then you go and see the actions that we have here. They add nobody in the draft here. And so they really have no choice but to make Jameson Williams a full-time starter. If he's not, then he's going to go down as one of the biggest busts in recent memory, especially at the wide receiver position. 6'1", 4.39 speed, 94th percentile there. 15.6 ADOT last year, was 5th in the league. We've seen some decent efficiency metrics from the guy, just a lack of consistent playing time. But when they only added Donovan Peoples-Jones reuniting with the team, didn't do much last year. Traquan Smith, no real new competition for Jameson Williams. Of course, a kind of winner there in the same sense would be Sam Laporta, but we all loved him anyways. It's not like we have to wax poetic on this guy. It's really JMO and the faith this team is showing in him. And he's risen a little bit in best ball price, but still right around pick 90 to 100. Very intriguing offense to get a nice increased boosted role here. What are your thoughts, Mo? You think JMO's got any juice?
Yeah, it was shocking, honestly, that we didn't see much of a climb after the draft, after they didn't really add anyone. I mean, he's come up since best ball opened just a couple of spots. He's still hovering right around that pick 100 mark. And I wouldn't imagine that just that vote of confidence in Jameson Williams would get people more excited, but it hasn't. And like you said, last year, it was really a lack of playing time that hampered his production. He didn't really get over 70% route participation in any game. Only one game last season, over 70% route participation. And he was floating around that 55 to 60% route participation for most of the season, at least when he was active. So really not on the field enough to have big enough of an impact. But without adding anyone other than Donovan Peoples-Jones and Traquan Smith, it seems like a significant vote of confidence. And I don't really see how they don't use him in a full-time capacity unless we see one of those Chiefs-esque really nasty rotations of receivers. But I really don't think that either Smith or DPJ have the talent or the profile to compete with Jameson Williams. So I'm not too worried about either of those guys siphoning off not just opportunities to get on the field from Jameson Williams. So I think he's a pretty big winner. And without a jump in price, I don't see why you wouldn't be drafting him right around pick 100. And then in the sense of Sam Laporta, I mean, how much of a winner can he be? I mean, he's already going in the 3rd round of drafts, but I think he's going to consistently be drafted as one of the top 2 tight ends. So not a big difference there.
No. And not even though they not add anybody, we failed to mention too, they also lost Josh Reynolds, their 3rd most targets last year on this team. So even more opportunity beyond not just adding somebody. And I like that you brought up the route share. The last game of the season was the playoffs, obviously, against the 49ers. We had an 81.4% route share for JMO. And how did he respond? He scored 2 touchdowns. And also that creative usage, he got some carries. We saw him do a couple house calls on the ground as well. So we've seen these glimpses. We've seen these flashes. We saw the deep ball roll. And in college, he was far more than just a deep ball artist, too. A complete game wrecker in that sense, of course, but could get it done in the intermediate games and on screens. And I'm just very excited to see this guy that was a top 12 overall pick, freakish athleticism in that kind of vaunted receiver class, was one of the first names called. I think they're really going to give him a full shot. And in that pick 100 range, the receivers have dried up so much that this is one of the few ones that really does bring a lot to the table. And again, that vote of confidence so big there. Another offense with a lot of gaping opportunity here is the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of people expected them to make a move at pass catcher in this draft, but no, Michael Gallup gone, just like Josh Reynolds and the Lions we were just talking about. So mouths have been removed and nobody really added. I know you talked about Ryan Flournoy on the notes here, so I'll let you talk about him in a second. But just looking at the overall environment here, you couldn't ask for a better situation. First in points, 30.1. Second in total plays, 67.3. First in pass attempts, pass yards, and passing touchdowns. And this was with a pretty horrendous first 6 weeks of the seasons where Dak was averaging under 15 fantasy points per game. They ultimately went to one of the most pass-happy attacks over the second half of the season following their week 7 bye. And boom, now they finished first in all of those passing categories. So this is a fertile passing environment with wide open opportunities. So yeah, of course, CeeDee Lamb, already going as the first receiver off the board, only second behind McCaffrey. You can't really rise there, but certainly wasn't hurt by this draft. I think of Brandin Cooks, Jake Ferguson, and maybe even Jalen Tolbert going in the last round of drafts as pretty big winners here. They also dodged Zay Jones. That was a guy that was rumored to be visiting there. We found out today that he's signing with the Cardinals. So looks like they're locked in. I'm loving Cooks around 130, 136 is his ADP right now. Ferguson going at 90. I think these guys got huge bumps up and huge votes of confidence with nobody else other than a 6th-round rookie added in one of the most fertile passing environments in the NFL. But you did mention this Ryan Flournoy guy. I don't know anything about him, but I'd love to know what you know, because I see this as a huge win for all the other guys, and maybe even Jalen Tolbert potentially stepping into that clear-cut number 3 receiver role.
Yeah, so the Dallas added Ryan Flournoy out of Southeast Missouri State in the 6th round of drafts, and I don't want to make too much of this guy because at the end of the day, he still is a sixth round draft pick. But the athletic profile is something. It was significant enough and impressive enough to bring him up. 9.88 RAS score, so that always already jumps off the page. 94th percentile broad jump, 89th percentile vertical, and ran a 4.44 40-yard dash. So it's pretty intriguing just in terms of the athletic profile. That's a kind of guy you want to take bets on. And I don't think he's even getting drafted or discussed in terms of these best ball tournaments that are going on right now. But the Cowboys beat reporters seem to think that his game translates to take over the role that Michael Gallup is leaving behind. The outside receiver, he's the outside receiver type. That's his bread and butter. He doesn't go inside, or in college didn't go inside a lot. So they think that he's got a chance to immediately at least compete. I don't think we're not going to see him on the field too much this season, I don't think. So because like I said, this still is a 6th round draft pick, but definitely someone to keep your eyes on or keep an eye on, just looking at those off-season training camp reports, seeing if he's able to build up any steam and impress the coaching staff, because if he can earn a backup role, I mean, he's one injury away from being on the field regularly within one of the best offenses, arguably the best, most pass-happy and fantasy-friendly offense in the NFL. So if someone goes down, he's got huge contingent value. And with an athletic profile like that, if he gets the chance to get on the field and earn some targets, I think he's got a great chance to do something with the opportunities that he gets. But at the end of the day, I mean, not going to be free in draft, so grab him if you want to, but don't expect much. But just a profile that you got to take note of.
Yeah, guy to know of. But again, I do think and we were already drafting a lot of Ferguson and Brandin Cooks, and certainly post-draft that's going to continue. And we should also just mention Dak. This is a passing-focused show. We got to call Dak a big winner here, given the lack of investment in the run game, multiple linemen added, including 2nd rounder Cooper Rush. So there is definitely some intriguing line boosts and really no investment. They bring back Zeke Elliott, of course. But to me, all that suggests is this philosophy change where we saw that huge bump in pass rate over expectation following the week 7 bye is going to continue. And how did Dak respond? Again, we already talked about the fact that he was averaging under 15 points per game over the first 6 weeks. He then averaged over 24 points per game in the second half of the season, was the number 1 quarterback in that span, was top 12 in 82% of his games from week 8 to 18, including 5 efforts of 30-plus fantasy points. And yet his price is dropping. It makes no sense to me. Better line, clear indications they're going to continue this pass-happy attack. first in pass touchdowns, third in pass yards, quarterback 3 in fantasy points on the year. Again, despite that brutal board, I saw him get dropped in leagues over the first half of the year. I think this is a phenomenal win for Dak Prescott as well, and somebody we will continue to build in these drafts. I love drafting him in this span. So another guy to consider a winner. No, in our last show, you had mentioned Chris Olave as somebody you're now starting to target in round 2 as a big winner. What did you see happen on draft night or not happen that makes you feeling good about Chris Olave?
I mean, it's hard to not bring up the lack of additions that they made. They bring in Bub Means in the 5th round, and your note that you have on our pre-show notes, not sure he's a real human. And I would have to agree. I mean, one of those guys that I heard, one of those guys I heard about in the pre-draft process, but really didn't pick up any steam. Not someone that anyone is particularly concerned with, especially as a 5th round receiver. Like I said earlier, just that later draft capital doesn't often translate to legitimate usage and consistent usage throughout the season. So, I mean, the everything's there for Chris Olave. A lack of competition. Derek Carr in the past has supported multiple very successful receivers. I mean, I think people will tend to forget that Derek Carr was able to turn Hunter Renfrow into a top 10 fantasy receiver just a couple of years ago. And now Hunter Renfrow isn't even on the face of the planet Earth, it seems. I mean, the guy has just completely disappeared. He's made something out of nothing with receivers before, and he's had good seasons with Devontae Adams, of course. And did Carr and Amari Cooper have any overlap in Las Vegas or at Oakland at the time?
It was Oakland at the time, yeah. And him and Crabtree, Cooper and Crabtree were both solid wide receiver 2s, if not wide receiver 1s for stretches when Carr was having those kind of MVP style runs. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, Bo, because I will remember watching the Saints and just feeling like it was so boring and like, Olave could never seem to get it fully going. And maybe he didn't. He was only a wide receiver 1 in 25% of his games, but he was getting bathed in targets. And I dug in today, and I thought the Saints were going to be bottom of the league in points. They were actually 10th in total points, 23.6, 5th in total plays, 65.9, 10th in pass attempts, and 9th in pass touchdowns. Top 10 offense, especially for passing game this year, which really surprised me, caught me off guard. Did not expect that with Derek Carr. So I do think the environment's better than you'd expect. Also has to be a big win for Rashid Shaheed too, right? With
massive
coming in, yeah.
Massive. I mean, we all saw what Shaheed could do with the ball in his hands and just as a deep threat as well. We're just looking for more consistent volume. And I think we're going to see that. I mean, Michael Thomas is out of the picture now. And in the last 2 years, 3 years even, I mean, he hasn't been much of a factor, but it's just one less body that he has to compete with. And I think he's going to, I mean, just thinking about it, who else is going to be there? I mean, the projected wide receiver 3 on their depth chart right now is A.T. Perry. And I know we talked about a little bit about him last year. I mean, he caught a couple of touchdowns, and maybe he was a waiver wire flyer in some super deep leagues. But I mean, this is a pretty typical nobody in terms of a wide receiver 3. So with A.T. Perry being their wide receiver 3, I don't see how Shaheed doesn't end up getting a bump in terms of his target share going into 2024. So if he's able to connect with Carr on some of those deep shots, and then get some more consistent work over the middle of the field and just those intermediate routes that aren't just absolute bombs down the field to get his catch rate up and get more consistent volume. I think we are going to like drafting Rashid Shaheed because he's going at pick 123 right now, wide receiver 57 off the board. He's I don't want to say free, but he's really, really cheap, and he's going around some names that I think have a lot more red flags than him. I mean, we'll talk about him in a second, but Jakobi Meyers, I would give me Shaheed over Jakobi Meyers every day of the week just in terms of the upside. So I think there's a very clear path to clear more volume in 2024 for Rashid Shaheed, and I don't mind picking him up at the wide receiver 57 price.
He actually had as many 20-point games as Chris Olave last year, which is pretty wild. And I do also want to mention before we move to our next passing game winners that they hired Clint Kubiak as their new offensive coordinator. I just love that kind of Shanahan tree, the Kubiak mold, where maybe a little bit of Deebo Samuel style usage for Rashid Shaheed. He is that kind of in the backfield piece. We've seen him line up all over the place in a steadier role within a more competent NFL modern play caller under Kubiak, who I really do like. I'm excited to see it. And they did also add a first-round tackle, pick number 14, fourth-ranked tackle by Dane Brugler, fourth guy off the board. So just better overall protection for those deep down the field routes to develop. That was a big issue with this passing game, is how much pressure they were giving up on Derek Carr, one of the worst offensive lines last year. One guy's not going to completely fix that, but it is great to see them address those needs right from the jump of the draft. So definite winners this passing game, no doubt about it. Now, in terms of a passing game, I couldn't call it a winner as an offseason. When you lose Stephon Diggs, a monster winner, probably not a win for Josh Allen by any means, but the pass catchers around him, that is humongous volume up for grabs. We've already talked at length in the Rookie Winners show how much volume was here to step into. Well over 3,000 air yards was most in the league. 86% of their air yards were up for grabs. Tons of targets, nearly 300 was second. It was the most wide open pie, especially when you consider such a quality quarterback being the engineer of it. And yes, they did make a move. They added Keon Coleman in round 2. Very polarizing as a prospect. I am very intrigued still, given that he's landed here with Josh Allen. But a lot of people are expecting multiple wide receiver stabs. Maybe they trade up and get one of those true alphas, and it just didn't happen. So we'll see how Keon Coleman develops. I'm not against him by any means, but you got to consider when he's the only addition to this offense now, they are definitely giving a good vote of confidence to Curtis Samuel, who thrived previously under Joe Brady, was second in the NFL in total receiver touches, given that he had 40 carries, was moved all over the place under Joe Brady, had over 100 touches that season. And then Khalil Shakir, yeah, there might be a little bit of a battle for the slot here, but he certainly gets a little bit of a bump up, actually averaged nearly 20% target share in games without Stephon Diggs, and really started to pick it up over the playoffs as Diggs started to kind of fade down the stretch. So those guys clear winners at the receiver position with only Coleman added. But to me, the biggest winner here has to be Dalton Kincaid, who I'm not alone in thinking this, but I would not be shocked at all should Kincaid lead this team in targets. And the more I've thought about it, he goes as the fifth tight end off the board right after Trey McBride. Usually Mark Andrews goes before him, and then he's the fifth guy off the board. But part of me is thinking here, like, if I think Kincaid could and maybe will be the number one target for Josh Allen, why am I taking Trey McBride, who's probably the number 2 for Kyler Murray, a lesser quarterback, a less explosive attack? And I love this is not an indictment on Trey McBride. I've been scooping him as the tight end 3 in round 4 all the time, but I'm just starting to think round 5, Dalton Kincaid, a round later, maybe the number 1 option now. He already was averaging 20% targets per route with Diggs there. I could totally see that jump, and that was kind of borderline, mid-range tight end 1 status when you have that type of target share, but bump that up to 25% or so target share on his routes, which I don't think is insane with this cast of characters. I don't know. I really do think there's a number 1 tight end situation here that he could be the best tight end in fantasy by the year's end. I just like what I saw from the player, and I could see him getting immense volume, and the switch to Joe Brady, he started to pick it up too and targeted the running backs and tight ends more. I don't know. I know I'm giving a lot of words on Kincaid here, but I consider him a huge winner, and I kind of want to bump him up to my number 3 tight end behind only Kelce and Sam Laporta, with the upside to potentially beat those guys. I don't know. Am I nuts on thinking that, Mo?
The only case against Kincaid I can make, because I agree with you, I think he's the favorite at this point to lead this team in targets, but what kind of upside are you getting from Kincaid at pick 50 on 120 targets at 8.1 yard ADOT? Like, it's not very exciting. Like, you're going to get all these underneath throws, and it's not a lot of yak, and he's not that big of a playmaker. You're basically just like, I don't want to directly compare him to Evan Ingram, but like, I feel like the ceiling is almost what we saw out of Ingram last year. Like, probably a little bit more in terms of the yards per catch, but the 120 targets, Ingram last year was 120 targets, 100 catches, went for under 1,000 yards. And with the ADA and just like everything that I'm expecting and how Kincaid will be utilized, I don't see super high upside with Kincaid, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to be drafting him because, he's going to lead a Josh Allen-led offense in targets most likely. But the player I'm starting to cool off on is Keon Coleman, just because he is flying up draft boards. Right after we talked about values after the NFL draft, Coleman was going around pick 100, and I wrote an article right at that time talking about grabbing Keon Coleman while you could at pick 100. Now he's well into the 70s, going 73rd overall, wide receiver 40 off the board, and I'm getting nervous about that price because I just don't know if the talent that Keon Coleman has is enough to pay off at this price. I mean, I was listening to Matt Harmon the other day on his Reception Perception podcast, talking about how Keon Coleman really struggled against press man coverage and just man coverage in general, and how that doesn't often translate to success as an X wide receiver. And that's seeming like the role that Keon Coleman is going to be playing. And some people wanted him to move into this or play in the slot as just this big slot guy. But the rhetoric we're hearing out of Buffalo is that he's going to be their X outside receiver. So I'm getting more and more nervous about how he will fare in that role as an outside guy, especially given his success rate against the press man and all that. So I'm starting to cool off on him at this price. But at the end of the day, yeah, with the lack of addition, I agree. I really thought they were going to take 2 stabs at receivers and with significant draft capital. So these guys have to be winners. And I think Dalton Kincaid is the biggest winner of them all. And I think that Curtis Samuel provides value out of the slot. So in terms of at cost, I'm probably most interested in Curtis Samuel just because I don't mind him around that pick 100. I find myself going between him and Jameson Williams at that pick 100. They have nearly identical ADPs, and those are the guys I'm grabbing in that range. But overall, I agree. These are all big winners, but there's legitimate cases to be nervous about all of them.
Yeah, and I know this is a veteran show, so I don't want to go too deep into a debate on Coleman. And I don't want to come off as a Coleman truther. I get why it's polarizing. I listen to that same podcast. I love Matt Harmon's work. So I totally get those worries. And would he be better as a big slot? Probably. I would agree with that. You do have to consider, though, when he was on the same team as Jaden Reed, he earned more targets. He had more yards. Like, this is an NFL guy. We just saw him walk in and dominate. I know it's a different style of player, but you can't just completely throw away that this guy was with an NFL talent and outplayed him and out-targeted him and earned more work. So I do think there is still – I'm not going to completely fade Coleman. I am upset that it came up as fast as it did. I was hoping to get more of him when he was in the 90s and 100s. But I do still – especially if I've taken Josh Allen, which I've done a lot in these early best ball drafts, I'm still liking Coleman in that 70-ish range to stack up with him. And maybe Kincaid, the low A-dot. I get it. That is a concern. But the scouting report was this guy can get vertical, more of a receiver than a tight end coming out. Maybe we just haven't seen it unlocked either. Either way, definitely a lot of exciting volume up for grabs with the Bills. And last couple names here to go. We'll just kind of breeze through these last tight ends winners real quick in terms of voiding competition. Somebody's going to be good for the Chargers. I don't know who it's going to be, but you look at Vernon Davis, a 15-touchdown season, consistently hovering around 100 targets, and then we don't need to sell you on Mark Andrews and how damn good he was in the Greg Roman offense. Yes, I understand talent can dictate the targets there. We had a round 1 pick on Vernon Davis, huge athleticism, and then Mark Andrews is one of the best pass-catching tight ends in the league. I'm not saying that just Greg Roman means tight ends are going to get showered with 120-plus looks on average, anything of that nature. But it is a staple of this offense and certainly in the red zone. So I do think there's going to be a tight end that logs, especially consider that it's only Ladd McConkey here, Josh Palmer, okay, like a number 3 receiver at best, in my opinion. So I do think there's going to be some opportunity for a tight end to do some damage. The question is, who's it going to be? And if you get that right now, which is, again, a huge question mark, they're all going undrafted at this point. You can take stabs in that last round. I've taken stabs on certainly Parham. You guys know my love for this guy. 6'6" monster, XFL legend. Last game of the year, had an 80-yard, 5-catch day, had multiple 2-touchdown days. He's done it with Justin Herbert before, and I think that pre-established report could potentially carry him over. There is also the chance that this is just not Jim Harbaugh's guy. He's on a low contract deal, and they already added Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst, so maybe Parham's going to be kicked out the door. So that's the risk in going too heavy on him, that he might just not even be on an NFL roster by the end of this offseason. So I've kind of stabbed at Will Dissly too, the guy that got the biggest contract. Hayden Hurst has that history as well from the Ravens with Greg Roman and their GM bringing him back over, but he's also dealt with a ton of pretty significant and serious injuries in addition to some mental health concerns over these last few years. So with Hayden Hurst, I'm not convinced he's going to be on the field for a full season. So it is a big question mark who is going to be the tight end 1. And maybe there is just not a true tight end 1 and it's just a gross rotation. And then none of these guys are all that valuable, but it is a staple of this offense. We have some athletic and intriguing guys that could potentially take it over. Parham, I think, has the highest upside case. That's the one I've been doing the most stabs at. Do you have any feelings on this, or you just like wait and see and we'll figure it out?
As things have been moving along, I'm leaning more towards the gross rotation. I mean, I just don't believe in the talent of any of these three guys to emerge as the top option. And I think like obviously the success of tight ends under Greg Roman is clear, but I mean, you have to just understand that I don't think that the talent level of under any of these guys even is remotely close to the talent of either Mark Andrews or Vernon Davis. So I know we were talking about earlier in the season about grabbing Parham, just hoping he grabs a handful of touchdowns at the right time throughout the season. But as I've been drafting more and more, I'm just not getting these guys for the most part because I'm trying to have my tight end situation cleared out, like just be fully set at tight end by the time these guys are available in drafts, because this is the most ugly like late tight end situation that I've seen in recent memory, just the last handful of years drafting. So I just don't want to be taking stabs in the range that these guys are going at tight end. Just so based on just how I'm constructing my rosters most of the time, I'm just not drafting tight end in this range, so I'm avoiding them. But aside from roster construction, I just in terms of how the team outlook and talent perspective, I don't want to bet on really any of these guys to emerge as the top guy, and I'm leaning more towards this being kind of a nasty committee. Is that kind of how you're seeing it as well? I mean, I know you're kind of going back and forth, but
I think so, and I think ultimately I've come to that same position where like once Jonnu and Tyler Conklin are off the board, like those are kind of the last two tight ends I really want as my tight end 2 or 3 on 3 tight end builds, and I don't like dipping in too late. It is a situation that I just wanted to mention, and I do think I'll be monitoring heavily in training camp. I've gotten to the place I do take Parham in a few early drafts. But ultimately, to me, it's like, why roll those dice? Because if by the end of training camp we do get some reports like, hey, Parham is running the most routes and Greg Roman calls him a weapon or something like that, okay, great. Now we can take some comfortable stabs at it. But even in those cases, I don't expect him to be anything more than a last-round pick, which is where you'd be drafting him now, but with all the risk of him potentially not even being on a roster. So why not just wait, see how it happens, see how it plays out, and if we get some nuggets that, one of these guys is separating, I think there's still going to be a last-round pick, and in that case, I will be loading up towards the end of August. But this stage of draft season when there's so many question marks, I do think it's a valuable role. I think someone's going to make some noise with it, but I'd rather wait and see because I still think they'll all be last-round picks, and you're not really gaining much of an edge by taking a stab right now at it by any means. The last guy I just wanted to bring up, and you guys love Travis Kelce. We love Travis Kelce. He's going at the end of round 3, early round 4, which is the latest we've seen in many years. And I think he could be in just back into those situations that made him that first round, 7th overall type of lock that was the number 1 tight end for 5 straight years. Last year, maybe he's lost a step and probably has. He's 35 now. I get that. But he is definitely better when he is not the complete and utter focal point of the defense, when he has a couple of lifters around him. And last year, as good as Rashee Rice became, he still isn't a guy that burns down the field and opens up that space. But now you have both Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown to spread out the defense and let Travis Kelce get some more underneath space. And like I said, Rashee Rice isn't the perfect fit for that role, but once he emerged, Andy Reid said, you think it's a coincidence that we had Travis Kelce return to Travis Kelce status over the playoffs? It was because the defense couldn't just completely take him out of the game. So I am very excited. It seems kind of intuitive that, maybe his targets take a little bit of a hit and he's not the focal point, but he's actually historically performed much, much better when he has some surrounding talent around him to take that attention away. So I am loving this cheap price tag on Travis Kelce. I know we raved about Sam Laporta earlier. To me, it's a clear 1 and 2. They're a tight end tier by themselves, and I love if one of them are sitting there. If I had picked 12 in a draft, and I get to snag one of those 2 guys, I think it's a huge edge. I wouldn't be shocked at all if we get that playoff run we saw from Travis Kelce. If he does that for the majority of the season, and you're getting that in the end of round 3, early round 4, you're going to be feeling great. So I love his outlook with these new weapons that can spread the field around him. Do you feel similarly?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's pretty hard to not want to grab Travis Kelce in round 3, and especially when he slips to round 4. And going back to like just where I'm targeting tight ends, I'm always trying to grab one of those guys who is going in rounds 4 through 6, that Kelce through Kittle tier. I'm trying to leave almost every single draft with one of those guys. The only thing that makes me nervous about Kelce is so we all know his production was not what we're used to seeing in the regular season. So you brought up the point that early in the season, struggling Chiefs wide receivers allowed defenses to focus in on Kelce and kind of take him out of the game. So I'm asking myself, is it that? Or is it that the Chiefs understand that they can win without having to rely so heavily on Kelce and save him for the playoffs? Because, I mean, we saw his best production in the playoffs and we saw him go off in the Super Bowl. So I'm just debating whether or not it's the lack of talent at wide receiver early in the season, or whether or not as Kelce's getting older, they just want to save him for the playoffs, because they know basically as long as Patrick Mahomes stays healthy throughout the season and they have a quality defense, which they should next year, they're basically going to stroll in the playoffs no matter what. They don't need Kelce to have these otherworldly performances on a week-to-week basis throughout the regular season. So that's the kind of debate that I'm having with myself. But I mean, it's still really not impacting whether or not I'm drafting Kelce. If he's getting into round 4, I'm grabbing him almost every time. So yeah, you have to think of him as a winner, and just at his price, why not take the best tight end of all time?
Yeah, I do. Best tight end of all time is a Rob Gronkowski fan here. I'm going to take a little umbrage too, but I don't want to get too deep into that here, or else we will never get to our draft. But I will just say I totally agree with those questions. And they've even said, like, yeah, we know we can kind of save him to the playoffs. And I would not rule that out. He ran, about 65 to 70% of the routes was a career low. And that could definitely happen. I guess even if he has last year's numbers and that's his floor, that's still really not too bad at the beginning of round 4. Like, I think we're drafting him at his floor and nobody's accounting for the ceiling at all. That maybe he just becomes Travis Kelce again with more space underneath. So I do think it's very valid to be questioning that. And I still think it's kind of way overbaked right now into his price. Now, moving on to just a handful of other winners here. These are more quick to hit. It's just that fact that they left the draft with better QB situations. And you got to think of that for the Vikings with JJ McCarthy. Not that I'm this huge McCarthy truther, but certainly better than Sam Darnold, who has historically been horrendous, has a career average under 210 passing yards, has just points per game, has always been bottom 4 in the league. It would have been hideous, even with Kevin O'Connell, a QB whisperer. I was not expecting much with this offense in Sam Darnold. So it's great to know that we now have a stabilizing force at the QB position. And the Vikings, even last year, with all the carousel going on once Cousins was out, 37.1 pass attempts per game was 6th, 5th in pass yards, 256.4, 5th in passing touchdowns per game with 1.8, and 11 in total on total points. So really just a solid overall offense, despite all the quarterback turmoil going on there. And now ideally McCarthy we've seen glimpses of his arm as phenomenal. Some scouts saying he had the best arm in this class. I don't buy any of that necessarily, but I do buy that he's going to be a significant upgrade over what this could have been with Sam Darnold. And it makes me feel a lot better about Justin Jefferson. It makes me feel a lot better about Jordan Addison. And even TJ Hockenson, who's apparently ahead of schedule right now, kind of creeping into one of my favorite picks in that 110 to 120 range, especially if I've waited on tight end. I just feel a whole lot better about this Vikings passing game and the fact that you can get McCarthy with your last round pick or your second to last round pick. And I can see him being a top 15 quarterback in this offense like Nick Mullins was. So I think everybody all around is winners here, given that they have a new quarterback. Would you agree? I know you're an Ohio State boy, so I don't know if the bias is going to come in here, but
no,
I think it's big.
I agree. I mean, my only note that I had here is you gotta love Jefferson in mid-round 1. I mean, like, yeah. I don't know. I love when he slips to me at like the 7th pick. Like, if someone is just super bullish on one of those, either Bijan or Brees or even Amon-Ra, if any of those 3 guys are going ahead of Jefferson, I love when he slips to me. I mean, well, what's not to love about Jefferson in mid-round 1? But the other group of receivers that we kind of want to hit here as slight winners just because of their improved quarterback play is the Commanders receivers. And for me, it's mostly Terry McLaurin. I brought it up last show. I think we're going to see a concentration of targets, especially for Terry McLaurin in 2024 with the Cliff Kingsbury offense. So last season, I mentioned it on our last show, there was a stretch of games where there were a double-digit number of players seeing targets on this Commanders offense. And that's not typical for any NFL offense, having 9 players catch passes in a game and having 11 different players see targets. Like, that's kind of insane. And that was happening not consistently, but for a stretch of this season, there was a ridiculous number of players getting involved in this offense. So I think Terry McLaurin can see a big boost in his production if these targets get concentrated. And the other guy I wanted to bring up is not Jahan Dotson, but it's Luke McCaffrey. I think he's really coming for those slot snaps. I mean, who else is here? You've got McLaurin, you've got Dotson, and then the other guys competing for reps here are De'Ami Brown, a guy who's never really been able to do much, Olamide Zaccheaus, who's been kind of that journeyman Falcons, Eagles, and now he's in Washington. Doesn't really move the needle for me. And then you've got the corpse of Jameson Crowder, who could compete for slot snaps, but I have no faith in Jameson Crowder really being a factor this year. And so it's a realistic situation where Luke McCaffrey is the starting slot receiver pretty early on in the season. So McLaurin and McCaffrey are the guys that I'm most excited about in this offense. And if Jaden Daniels can perform, and like I said earlier, we see a little bit more concentrated targets and not having 11 guys involved in the passing game on a weekly basis, I think both of these guys can be pretty successful relative to their price.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Jaden Daniels, I'm a big Jaden Daniels believer. I'm very excited for what he can do for this offense. I know this isn't a rookie show, but again, any quarterback that's seen 700 rush yards and or 120 rush attempts in a season, 15 of 16 times is finishing your top 12 quarterbacks. I know we've talked about that before, and that's a guy I'm trying to start. I do not have enough Jaden Daniels given his price. I think he's going to only rise throughout the summer. I'm trying to add more and more of him as we go. And I'm also trying to add more of his weapons as a result, especially McLaurin. We saw how DeAndre Hopkins in this Kingsbury system was getting peppered. I do think you're discounting, and maybe it's just because as a rookie I had Dotson and 8 touchdowns in only 11 games. Unsustainable, clearly, because we saw nothing last year. It was absolutely abysmal, but I'm not ready to completely throw in the towel. Certainly at 136 ADP right now, there was enough of a glimpse as a rookie, a first-round talent, was getting it done every layer of the field, had a good preseason, and I don't want to hold that weird offense like you were just talking about with such a widespread passing game, Sam Howell and a rotating quarterback hideous carousel. I'm not going to hold that completely against Dotson. I'm not saying I'm all in and loading up. I really do like Brandin Cooks more going in the same price range. Yet I also think Dotson has that ceiling to potentially blow that out of the water from that price range. So I'm not giving up on him. I do like McCaffrey, though, as well. I think he's a very intriguing. And then Ben Sinnott, it's just an intriguing offense to stack. Given that a quarterback we're going to talk about in a little bit, Kyler Murray, QB 6, 5, 10, and 9 in points per game. It is an interesting air raid offense, to say the least. I think those guys are definite winners either way when it's not Sam Howell being the one throwing them the rock. We're going to now move on to players we consider losers based on who's added. But Wolfpack, I haven't asked once yet, trying to do it less, but that thumbs up button would mean the world. We have about 140 with us. Not bad, but we cracked 500 last time, given that you guys were willing to share, retweet, and all that good stuff, and it was great. So please do consider getting some questions in. Maybe it's because Krana's not asking 100 questions that we don't have that mailbag piling up. We got nothing in the mailbag right now. We'll answer all your Dynasty Keeper, whatever questions you have on the mind. Come pop them into the mailbag. We'd be happy to answer, but please do consider hitting a thumbs up button for you. Thank you again so much for being here on the Friday. Let's now move on to some wide receiver losers. We won't need to belabor these points, but you got to consider for the Chicago Bears, one of the most explosive trio of wide receivers, but that's going to make it difficult to predict what I think week to week who's going to be the one. DJ Moore and Keenan Allen have thus taken some tumbles in my rankings. Moore, not quite as much. I do think he'll be in every down, whether it's 2 receiver sets, whatever it might be. I don't think Moore's going to be the one leaving the field, but in particular, Keenan Allen has taken a hit in my rankings. I think Odunze will probably be in 2 wide receiver sets. The guy, Keenan Allen gets kicked into the slot potentially full time, which is, nice mismatches, and that's where he really does his best work. But we also just saw Shane Waldron calling plays for a 3 wide receiver team where an exciting rookie landed in JSN. And that's kind of, yes, I get Odunze, JSN, completely different players. And Odunze will not be playing that JSN slot role, but he was averaging an abysmal, I think it was under 8 yards a target. It was pathetic for a receiver that can get deep here. And maybe that was just a weird fluke under Waldron. But we just saw that kind of situation where we had 3 really impressive. Miles and kind of all three of DK, Tyler Lockett, and JSN were disappointing relative to their prices. And maybe, just maybe, Caleb Williams, everyone's saying the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. Sure, maybe he ends up chucking for 4,500 yards, something nuts, and all these guys are fed. But more realistic, they average right now, rookie quarterbacks, even as number one overall picks, are averaging right around 3,500 yards. And that's just not a lot of passing yardage to go around. So if we bump it up to 3,800, maybe even close to 4K, that's still not a humongous pie when you especially consider, too, Swift's not a zero in the passing game. Cole Kmet could definitely vulture some touchdowns with that 6'6" frame at minimum. It's going to be a very crowded situation for a rookie QB that we're putting a lot on Caleb Williams if these guys are going to pay off their current prices. We've seen Odunze take a huge hit in price, but I think Keenan Allen should be taking a bigger hit myself. I consider them, all three of these guys, kind of losers. I don't really draft DJ Moore even in round 3 anymore myself. Am I overreacting? Are you still dipping into any of these guys or what?
I mean, yeah, I want to have some of these guys. I mean, they're all quality receivers, but I agree. Yeah. I think Keenan Allen's the biggest receiver. I mean, especially the last couple of years as he's gotten older, we've seen him succeed just by being a target hog. And it is going to be exponentially more difficult to garner 11 targets a game when you're competing with Rome Odunze and DJ Moore versus Josh Palmer and whoever they were throwing out there last year at times, like Jalen Guyton and stuff. Like, it's obviously not even remotely similar, the competition that we're seeing. And their prices are falling. Keenan Allen's come down about a half round in the last week or so, and Odunze about a half round as well, with Keenan Allen going comfortably ahead of Odunze, actually. And I think the point you brought up is solid. I think it's all going to come down to, at least from the aspect of Keenan Allen, because I think DJ Moore is going to stay on the field almost every play. And he's got that big play ability to bring him up in some weeks and have those spike weeks that we're looking for. But I think it's going to be a lot more difficult for Keenan Allen. And it'll come down to whether or not he's able to stay on the field for those 2 wide receiver sets. So early on in the season, just keeping our eye on the and I know this doesn't really apply to best ball, more managed leagues, but keeping our eye on the route rates for Keenan Allen and seeing if he's staying out there for those 2 receiver sets, it's going to be really important for how we play Keenan Allen throughout the season. So I agree that they're all going to cannibalize each other, and it's hard to pick and choose which guy you really want to be drafting. So I'm trying to mix all of them in, but I'm getting to Rome Odunze more often than Keenan Allen just because of the price, and you don't really know in what capacity Keenan Allen's going to be used in the Shane Waldron offense, because the like I said earlier, he got there just being a target hog, and that's going to be really, really difficult this year.
Yeah, we will see. And of course, just want to reiterate too, this is a redraft focused, best ball focused show right now. Long term, I think Rome is in a beautiful spot to grow alongside this rookie QB. Keenan Allen's on only a 1-year deal right now. So ultimately, I think it's going to be a great fantasy situation, especially if Caleb Williams continues to progress throughout the years. It's just right now a 3-headed nightmare is a lot for a rookie quarterback to sustain all 3 of these guys at their current price tags. Moving forward, Marquise Brown, Rashee Rice, it's more so Xavier Worthy, the trade up to go get this guy who seems like a pretty similar skill set. A lot of people comparing him to Marquise Brown as a player just with a faster 40 time, more quick twitch ability, better in the screen game. So it seems to me like a kind of a redundancy that might result in Marquise Brown not seeing the looks. I think both can coexist. I think both can do good things. I'm excited to see what he does. And then Rashee Rice, I know we often joke like, we're calling these guys losers that are making millions of dollars and freak athletes, and who are we sitting on our mom's basement right now and calling people out as losers. But I will say Rashee Rice has been an absolute actual NFL, like a real loser off the field right now, driving the car and almost like killing people, then punching people in nightclubs. It's going to get to the point where the Chiefs just decide, as good as he was in fantasy and as a player, we just can't rely on this guy. And I think that's going to, benefit Worthy. It depends on what the suspension is, but a lot of rumblings that it could be half of the year or more. And if he keeps doing this type of stuff, like it might truly end up being that way. And who's to say that the Chiefs just decide, we know we can't rely on you at this point. So all the plays we were going to design for you, the role that we were carving out for you in those playoffs, maybe that just goes to Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy at this point. So there is a point where Rashee Rice will fall to 70s, where I'm like, okay, what if his suspension's only 3 games and Rashee Rice gets back in the good graces? Because he was really impressive down the stretch. There's no denying that he fit a very, very solid role in this offense and probably still will. But there's a point where this suspension, depending on how long it is, depending on how his behavior continues to go this offseason, that he just could become useless. Like, that they could phase him out completely. I don't know. We shall see. But I'm not overly reacting to Marquise Brown right now, but I am kind of avoiding Rashee Rice unless he falls to 75. And typically somebody's going to take him before I will. So I'm out. I'm out on Rashee Rice. I consider him a big loser right now for sure.
I don't know if you saw it, but the most like recent development, absolutely ridiculous. He texts this photographer to come back to the club just so he can clock him in the face.
Oh,
like it's absolutely insane what this guy is doing off the field this offseason. So it's a total mess in KC. And now that it's further developing, I know that I mentioned on the last show just trying to not get overly exposed to either of these guys, either Rice or Worthy, because those are the guys I think we're going to see fluctuate the most based on what happens with this Rashee Rice situation. I mean, obviously we'll see Marquise Brown fluctuate some in terms of his price, but I think the two that will be most impacted are Rice and Worthy. But at this point, like you said, I don't know what's going to happen with Rice, and there's a very real possibility where he's not on the field for a large majority of the season. So I'm looking to get Worthy now. Honestly, I was out on Worthy at cost under the assumption that Rice was going to be there for the season. But now that it's looking more and more like Rashee Rice is going to be off the field for an extended chunk of the season, I'm looking to get Worthy now, because even though people know that in the back of their head, when the news officially comes out, like what the number of games is, Worthy's going to jump. And if it's an extended suspension, he's going to jump a lot. So drafters know that now, but still, it'll still end up in him being pushed up draft boards. So I'm trying to get my shares now because I'm not particularly interested at his current price, and I know I'm going to hate it when that suspension is officially announced and Worthy climbs up draft boards. But moving on to another wide receiver situation, we've got the 49ers wide receivers, and we have them listed as slight losers, but I'm really not too concerned about it. Yeah. So they add Ricky Pearsall in round 1, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's Deebo Samuel and Brandin Ayuk that we're talking about here. They're two of the better receivers in the NFL, and they've got pretty solidified roles within this offense. I don't see Ricky Pearsall really competing with either of them for snaps. And even without, just as a whole, the 49ers offensive scheme isn't going to lead to Ricky Pearsall competing for targets with these guys, just because I don't think he's going to be out on the field at the same time with these guys, because the 49ers ran the lowest rate of 3 wide receiver sets in the NFL last year. I think a lot of people these last couple of weeks been seeing that chart from Ryan Heath over at Fantasy Points. Really good follow on Twitter if you don't already, just comparing the 3 wide receiver set usage, and you see the 49ers all the way down there in the bottom of the chart, fewest dropbacks in the league and lowest rate of 3 wide receiver sets. So I just don't think that there's a world where he competes with them just in terms of a talent perspective. And I just don't even think he gets on the field with them that often, just because of how Shanahan likes to run this offense. Are you kind of on the same page there?
100%. That's why I have a question mark next to him. I just wanted to point out that despite a round 1 edition, I'm not worried about either Deebo or Ayuk. I still like taking both these guys in round 2. I do think it was more of an insurance policy. Should Deebo get hurt, which he often does, Purcell can come in and do a lot of that creative stuff out of the backfield, out of the slot. And ultimately, I do think it's more so next year. They know one of these guys is likely to be gone. It's going to be very tough to afford them both. And so they're kind of planning for the future. I do not consider either of them major losers. It's just more so Pearsall himself, probably not very, very useful without an injury here. Or maybe they do move Deebo or somebody this offseason. There's still potential for that. But ultimately right now, I'm not worried about the 49ers guys. I am worried about Michael Mayer for sure. I haven't been drafting him much anyways, and I certainly won't be. An intriguing tight end prospect, though. Ultimately now, though, Brock Bowers is just that much better of a tight end prospect. I just see no world where these two guys can coexist. And if they're not coexisting, it's because Bowers is the one that is absolutely overtaking it. So to me, Michael Mayer is toast. I do think he'll be annoying enough that Bowers himself isn't in a great spot. We talked about this on the tight end losers for rookies. There's so many spots that Bowers could have gone and just been an absolute focal point and monster. This was not one of them. It's very rare that you have like 2 top 8 tight end prospects in J.J. Zacharison's model over the last 2 years, ultimately now on the same team together. Not great. I do think Meyers takes a little bit of a hit too. He was very touchdown dependent last year, and a body like Bowers being there is certainly going to nibble away at his touchdown ceiling, in my opinion, because you also have Davante Adams getting showered in weekly targets. And Gardner Minshew, yeah, we've seen him sustain 1, maybe 2 viable guys. And Jakobi are reliable behind Davante Adams, maybe one of the two. And to me, it'd probably be Bowers. I think all the Raiders kind of took an issue, a little bit of a hit here from Bowers landing there. Not ideal.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not ideal. And like, I guess like the small like solace of hope is just like, I think we'll see a bump in their usage of 12 personnel, getting 2 tight ends out there and Mayer
For sure.
and Bowers. So, but yeah, like you said, I wasn't interested in Jakobi Meyers to begin with. There's better chances I'd rather take out there. I mean, he's going right in the range of some of our favorite quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence and Jared Goff, for those like mid to late round quarterbacks that we like. And then just some guys with more upside that I prefer, like Chase Brown and Rashid Shaheed. Total touchdown merchant last year. Didn't get there unless he was getting in the end zone. Not really earning targets other than he was early in the season, but tattered off pretty quickly for Jakobi Meyers. And yeah, he just wasn't getting there unless he was scoring touchdowns. And I'd rather take bets elsewhere. I just don't think there's a ton of upside with Meyers unless he's scoring a ton of touchdowns. I like to call him like the Gus Edwards of wide receivers. Like he's going to put up like 6 points unless he finds his way into the end zone. And that's just not the type of player that I'm interested in this range. I'd rather take my shots elsewhere.
Absolutely. And the last wide receiver losers we have on here weren't people that you were probably all that interested in drafting anyways, so I'll be quick. Mingo and Adam Thielen, though, kind of become undraftable. Maybe Thielen is a last-round plug, given how big of a target hog he was, but Deontay Johnson, fresher, younger, does everything Thielen did well, but better at this point. I like him. Leggett, they've already talked about how creative they want to be with him in terms of jet sweeps out of the backfield, move him around. They were in love with this guy, I guess. Their new head coach Dave Canales was boys with the offensive coordinator over there, and they talked about how they fell in love with Leggett. So I see a big role for him. So Mingo, somebody I wasn't touching anyways, but even Thielen now kind of disappearing. I just don't see a world where I'm not going to make a firm stance on Bryce Young yet, because I think everything was set up against him last year. The line sucked. The weapons were even worse. So it's tough to really judge the guy quite yet. And yet I still just, I don't know. He didn't rise above. A lot of people would have said CJ Stroud's cast last year was one of the worst entering the league, and we saw how he elevated everything around him. So I'm not sold on Bryce Young sustaining multiple weapons, let alone the third and fourth options now in this offense. So I won't be drafting any of Mingo, probably no Thielen, and not even a ton of Leggett. Not even a ton of Deontay. I'm just not really that into the Panthers at all. It's just kind of become a little bit messier. Maybe Deontay, but even then, like he goes, we both like Hopkins. We both, there's just guys, Vlad McConkey, that are going that to me, I just would rather take stab at. But you've always been a Deontay truther, so I don't think he's necessarily a loser here. I just still don't really go after him. I don't know. Do you want anything in this Panthers passing game or no?
Not particularly. I mean, yeah, you know me well enough. I'm going to be getting the Deontay at times. I mean, he's unfortunately, it's to the point where I cannot call him a target, but I will draft him at ADP or when he slips. But yeah, I don't really want to get to either any of these other guys. I just think it's really funny that just analytically, Leggett just looks like a total replica of Mingo, just in terms of how they produced and performed in college. They just like saw Mingo fail and then just went out and got a guy who profiles to be the exact same receiver. So we'll see what happens. Like, I don't want to completely dog this offense before we see Bryce Young in year 2, because I mean, that's kind of when you expect these highly drafted quarterbacks to make their big leaps. So we'll see what we get out of Bryce Young, and hopefully he's that quarterback that can, like you mentioned, elevate his receivers. I'm not completely sold on that being the case, and I'm not really sold on these receivers. And yeah, I mean, like the price reflects that. Nobody really wants to be buying into this offense. So you can get them here and there, especially if they're slipping past ADP, but none of these guys on this offense, other than I would say Jonathan Brooks, just because, and this is not that's not this show, but Jonathan Brooks is like the only guy that I'm super interested in this offense, just because I think he's got a chance to just fully bell cow this backfield. But once again, yeah, not this show. So these pass catchers, no real appeal to any of them, other than just how Deontay has performed as a route runner and a separator throughout his career. But then again, at the end of it, or not at the end, but I think we've already seen the best out of Deontay Johnson in terms of his production. So not super excited about anything having to do with this passing game. But moving on to the winning quarterbacks, the first one we got here, we got Kyler Murray, who added some significant weapons. So obviously Marvin Harrison with the 4th overall pick. And then just an hour ago, they bring in veteran Zay Jones, who was getting a lot of interest from teams across the NFL. I think he visited with like 5 or 6 teams, like including some pretty significant offenses. Yeah, some really significant offenses. So ends up in Arizona, and Kyler Murray is super interesting to me because he's going as the QB8. He's only up 8 or 6 slots since BBM opened, and I think that's just because, I mean, people were, like I said during our pre-draft show, people were just assuming that Marvin Harrison was going to be a Cardinal, so that was kind of baked into his price prior to BBM opening. So you don't see him rising up a ton, just a half round. But with the rushing upside and now the really solid weapons that he has around him, I like Kyler Murray as the QB8. He provides more upside than a lot of those pocket passers and some guys that go ahead of him. So I don't mind getting to Kyler Murray. And I said it right before he got cut. I don't think Zay Jones is complete dust, and Zay Jones is now just providing another late stacking option for Kyler Murray. So yeah, I'll be definitely building out some of those Cardinal stacks here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, QB 6, 5, 10, and 9 in points per game across his last 4. I'm all about it. The only reason I don't go completely all in is Dak's going right in the same range. We've already talked about how much we like Dak too. And it could get a little redundant just keep being like Patrick Mahomes, who is definitely a winner, had a new weapon. Now he's better. So we'll just kind of rapid fire through these and fire off this draft in just a few moments, folks. But yeah, I love that he's got a receiver in Xavier Worthy that can stretch the defense, that can dominate in the screen game and really boost that passing game. You got Trevor Lawrence added with Brian Thomas here. Definitely intriguing set of weapons between Kirk, Ingram, Brian Thomas now, definitely intriguing. Bryce Young, of course, more weapons. They beefed up the line in free agency as well. He rose despite being late. Another late guy is Daniel Jones, too, who I get it. Last year certainly burned me. I don't think I want to be in very much this year, but as a last-round guy to balance out maybe a Josh Allen team, there's a world where Daniel Jones could rebound because he now has Malik Neighbors. He finally has a decent weapon for him. And I just joined the draft and it actually fired right up. So we will continue right onward. We're going to have the pick 3 in this draft. And I'll just rattle off just a couple quick other winners based on either line and or weapon additions as well. Burrow, a round 1 tackle, added, and Jermaine Burton, one of the best receiver values in the draft, I think is a huge winner there. Gardner Minshew getting Bowers, no real quarterback selection made. Maybe he's going to compete with Aiden O'Connell, but I think Minshew wins that out. I'm actually on record right now saying I think Minshew will be this year's Baker Mayfield. Solid weapons all around him, can distribute the rock, and no one's going to really draft him, but as a last-round guy, I think he's going to be intriguing. I'll take more stabs when he wins that quarterback battle in camp, though. And then some last other, speaking of Mayfield, you got a new center, the best center on the board, according to Jane Brugler. Love that. Herbert got Ladd McConkey and Joe Alt, the best tackle prospect. And yeah, a loser as a whole, given the new Greg Roman offense. But I think the draft breathed some life into him. Last 2 names I have on here is Levis getting Latham as a first-round tackle. You love to see it. Rogers got Olu as a first-round tackle. You love to see it. And Jordan Love got a first-round guard. So just a couple line additions to mention there for quarterback winners. And we're on the clock. I think we got to go Tyreek Hill, right?
Yep, easy pick.
All righty. And we already got auto-picked it anyways as I was rambling about our quarterback winners. But I'll pull in the full draft here for you guys to see. And Mo, I know I went kind of rapid fire there. It just felt a little redundant to just kind of be like, new lineman, great. New receiver, great. But was there any quarterbacks on that list that you want to dive in a little bit deeper as a winner?
Oh yeah, I love getting my Jacksonville Jaguar stacks off. I mean, it's so easy, and for the pedigree of prospect and the hype that Trevor Lawrence had just one offseason ago, like everyone seems to have completely cooled off on this guy to a degree that I don't really understand. I mean, QB 15 off the board, going in the 120s, and his weapons aren't ridiculously expensive either. I think this is one of my favorite stacks just because I think he's a high ceiling quarterback, and you don't have to pay a premium for his stacking partners either. You've got Christian Kirk going 55 overall, wide receiver 31, Brian Thomas 74th overall, wide receiver 41, Ingram going 75th overall, tight end 8 overall. So you can grab Kirk and then have your choice between either Thomas or Ingram pretty easily in these drafts, and then grab Lawrence even later. So I mean, I don't think that not everyone's as excited as they were last season about this offense, but I don't think anything's really like significantly changed. I mean, obviously they lose Calvin Ridley, but they bring in Brian Thomas. I think this offense still has the same ceiling with Trevor Lawrence that they did last year. I don't think the switch from Calvin Ridley to Brian Thomas is enough for us to think the ceiling is different. And I know that the production last season was disappointing, but I'm not ready to give up on this. And with this massive discount that we're seeing, I'm just finding myself getting these stacks just because it's so easy and so cheap.
And I've been on record as saying that division, I'm just very intrigued in terms of trying out the philosophy of stacking divisions in some best ball this year, because you're going to get 6 of your games against those opponents. And I think that division's ripe. Like, I think the Titans are going to take a big step forward on offense. I think all the offense in that division can sneaky put up points, and none of the defenses seem to have made a ton of moves, any moves that overall scare me and think they're going to be juggernaut defenses. It's compared to going against like an AFC North type of grinded out division. I love this division to have a bunch of shootouts. And right now we're still playing schedule guesswork until it gets released. I think there's a little bit of a benefit to stacking within a division. So yeah, I'm all about it. We are well off into our draft here, folks. So if you enjoy what you're hearing, we'd love to answer your questions. Get them on in here, and we would be happy to answer them as we're drafting. I saw Puka on this draft go to 14th overall. I think that's a steal. He's typically going in that 9-10 range. So a nice value there for Bitcoin, getting Garrett Wilson and Puka Nacua. I think that's one of my favorite starts I'm seeing here. Marvin Harrison all the way up at 9. I mean, we're fans of him, but just have you a little early to you?
Yeah, first Bitcoin, that's kind of ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, it's like Harrison and Puka are basically just flip-flopping in this draft, which, I mean, I wish I was in the 11th slot right now. I mean, I wouldn't be complaining about Puka Nacua at the 14th overall pick, but you want to pull up the queue, see who we like. Yeah, for me, this is a pretty easy decision. Either Devontae or Debo, whoever slips to us. I think we're kind of on the same page there.
I am in the same page too. I prefer Devontae, who went, sadly. I do really like Debo. I would toss out Nico Collins to consider just because I like CJ Stroud coming around in round 5 or so right now as a pick. But I do like Debo more myself. Would you want to go Debo over Nico?
Yeah, that's my pick too.
All righty, cool. And I do hope to get maybe one more receiver here. Like I mentioned, though, I'm not into DJ Moore at all, really, at cost. I know it'd be a little bit of a reach given that you can get Josh Allen often at the bottom of the next round. But ultimately, I'm not opposed to considering Josh Allen this high, because when you look at how the stacks end up playing out, so let me go back to the full screen here. Typically, you're getting, Dalton Kincaid at that 51. Then you could get Keenan Coleman at the 70, 94, Curtis Samuel. Getting Josh Allen at the top of drafts, one, is a little different than what teams are doing, at least right now. And 2, it does set up somewhat nice for his stack. So if all the receivers of interest, and a lot of them have just gone in terms of Jalen Waddle and Mike Evans being the one I was really hoping for, I say if both Texans guys go here, we consider Allen. But who else? Is there any other names that you'd like to consider?
I really like to draft the Texans guys here. That's who I'm getting a lot in the early 3rd rounds, and I'm mixing in DJ Moore here and there, just like given that's where he's going and that's kind of where you have to take him. But for the most part, I'm looking to get the Texans guys. I'm not really getting a lot of Neighbors. It's been really hard for me to convince myself of Neighbors at this price. I mean, obviously, it's obviously not a
Nico
direct.
I was hoping for Nico so badly there. I like Diggs, but I really like Nico.
I'm fine to go Allen here and just mix things up a little bit.
It's up to I'm okay with Diggs too. If you really like Diggs, I'm happy to start 3 receivers.
Let's go Allen and see what happens.
You want to mix it up and not do a Stroud later? Yeah.
Might as well, yeah.
All right, let's mix it up. We'll do it. We'll get a little Josh Allen in here, even though I have a ton of Josh Allen already. I'm never mad about getting a lot of Josh Allen on my squad.
But back to Neighbors, I'm going to need someone to really convince me like that. And this is going to be very different for redraft, just his price. But I'm really going to need someone to convince me of this early 3rd round price tag. It's got the Garrett Wilson rookie season or last 2 seasons written all over it. Like the volume's obviously there, but I mean, this offense is just going to have so many stalled out drives, so many drives that end in the red zone without points, like just so many low scoring games. And even with the volume, it's just like been consistent years of unrealized ceilings with Garrett Wilson. And you can't make it as a direct comparison, but you can see the parallels. I mean, it's just the volume. Like I'm not arguing against the volume. Like I know it's going to be there, but how productive can he really be when this team is scoring like 14 points a game on a pretty regular basis? Like I don't see them scoring a ton of touchdowns on a week-to-week basis, and I'm just seeing a lot of punts and a lot of stalled out drives and just wasted possessions coming with this New York Giants team. So this price tag, it's just really hard for me.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan this year. I do think it's somewhat of a win given that there's really no one else to compete with for targets. I think you're going to get 5, 6 just design screens, some of the stuff that he does. He does everything well, but especially those slot routes where he just gets so many opportunities. But yeah, I mean, that volume coming from Daniel Jones, if Daniel Jones is anything like he looked last year, if we get to 2 years ago, Daniel Jones, maybe there's some value there. And again, I don't hate Daniel Jones like a last round stab in these drafts, so I don't completely hate it. But I'm with you. I'd much rather have Diggs. This is definitely the earliest I've seen Kelce go at 30, and this is, I think, closer to where he belongs. I think he should be going, honestly, maybe even a little sooner. But he might be somebody that we got to monitor on price because he was for so long just going in round 4, and it was beautiful. Cooper Kupp slipping to 41 is a really nice value to shout that one out too.
How close to Neighbors' ceiling do you think we're drafting him? I mean, he's going wide receiver 20. Like, I feel like I'm seeing like best case scenario, like wide receiver 15. And I guess that would be like a small win, but that's the best case scenario. We'll make our pick and then we can continue this Neighbors conversation. But
I would agree with you, close. He's getting drafted at his ceiling. No doubt about that right now. So, all right, we will pull in our queue. I mean, I'm a big fan of Pacheco here. You know, we've been talking about him as a huge winner who's going to keep coming up. We could go Kincaid and get our stack, but I think the fact that McBride's still here kind of insulates the fact. I think Kincaid will probably fall to us.
Let's go Pacheco and then get Kincaid on the way back.
That's what I'd like to do. And in worst case, if Kincaid goes, which is part of why we took Allen up here so we could stack him, I hope he doesn't go. But with McBride still on the board, I feel comfortable he'll fall to us. And if he doesn't, I do really love Amari Cooper in round 5. I think he's one of the bigger steals. His price just doesn't make any sense to me at all. The Browns were shockingly like 4th in the league in pass attempts per game. He had some of the most like 30-point days. He's perfect for best ball. So I think Amari Cooper is one of the steals of drafts right now. Part of why I also liked going instead of Stephon Diggs here is we probably would have had to go Stroud given that Collins was right here. There's no way Stroud would have made his way back to us. And I just really wanted Pacheco. I think he is such a steal. We talked about him on the Veterans Risers show last year. And Kincaid's there right now. And so is Trey McBride. Is it worth the stack to go Kincaid over McBride?
I mean, we could go and grab Kyler later and just have you want to go McBride and then grab Kyler later and have 2 quarterbacks?
I don't know. I kind of want to go Kincaid and just lock
that's
up
fine. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
It was that question I was posing earlier. Like, why are we so convinced Trey McBride's a better fantasy pick than Dalton Kincaid when we got the number one potential for Allen instead of the clear number two now for Kyler? So,
in my opinion, the ceiling is just exponentially higher. Not exponentially, but it's higher enough for me that I'm grabbing him ahead of Kincaid.
I mean, we're going to see McBride fall to right now. It's looking like 55 or later at this point because Laporta and Travis Kelce teams didn't stake him. The Lamar team stacked him. So, yeah, 55 for Trey McBride. Whew, that is a nice value for sure.
This guy is just picking up all of the guys who are slipping. Look at this roster: Bijan, Olave, Neighbors, Dell, McBride. This guy's got a pretty nice roster. He's kind of just picking up the scraps as they're coming to him.
Yeah, you can't really argue getting McBride there.
No, you can't. And
I think your point too, getting McBride here at 51 instead of Kincaid, that would have been interesting. We would have had to most likely have gone Kyler at 75 to complete the stack, which would have been a little bit of a reach on Kyler. And it's like, do I really want to reach on QB? Half of the reason I take Josh Allen is to not have to take another quarterback for a long time. You know what I mean? So
two premium picks on a onesie is pretty tough. But
the other good argument though too is like most teams are going to be stacking Allen with Kincaid, and understandably, rightfully so. But it is a little bit of a way to be different. To like, there's not going to be a lot of Allen McBride teams I'm imagining out there. Certainly if you have the choice of the two, like most are going to side with Kincaid. So
yeah, just because the prices on McBride and Kincaid are fairly like similar enough that if you've got Allen, you're going Kincaid there basically every time. It's like just like we did. So yeah, I don't think McBride Allen teams are going to be all that common. But I mean, you live and you learn. Seeing McBride slip there a little bit was kind of tough, but you can't be too mad about getting the who will likely be the target leader for your top quarterback's offense.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, we're going to be up in just a couple picks here. So
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that lad pick there?
I think it's a little bit of a reach. I was hoping Calvin Ridley was going to make his way to us. We don't think we need Kittle, but I'm not. Oh, there he goes. Anyways, I don't mind Jones and Montgomery to get a second running back. We could get our Keen Coleman pick now. I'm confident he'll make his way back to us next, though. But I don't know if there's anybody that's like screaming to me. I know we talked about liking Godwin too, and maybe Brian Thomas, but I'm not a huge fan. I would say one of the running backs or Coleman. Who are you feeling?
It's Montgomery or Coleman for me. I'm fine with Montgomery.
All righty. Yeah, we'll go Montgomery and then hope Coleman makes his way back to us.
I can't see why he would not make his way back to us.
Yeah, because we've got some receiver-heavy teams already. 4 receivers with Pickens, Cooper, DJ Moore. I love that build, by the way, what the C-Mac team is doing. I know I said I didn't love DJ Moore, but I mean, this is nice. I love Cooper and Pickens. This guy's doing it nice. So
I mean, it's so easy after you get CMC to just spam receivers for the next 5 rounds.
You know you're set. You know you're set at the top.
And like I think we brought this up before, but it's like just so easy because you know that even with the injury risk of CMC, even if you spent another like high draft capital pick on a running back, that team is probably done for anyways. So there's like really no reason to use another pick on running back for a long time after grabbing CMC. He's, as long as he's healthy, he's going to be in your lineup just about every week, maybe miss a game or two.
Yeah. Yep, 100%. And so again, we're getting real close to Ridley falling to us, which is nice. We do now have, thankfully, Coleman did fall to us. Yep. So we'll snag him here. We now have, I think we talked about this on the last show, like just filling out a roster. We're just about there now in terms of we got our QB, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, and a tight end, and our receiver and tight end are correlated with our quarterback, which is awesome. So the next pick would fill out a starting lineup, whether it's a running back or a receiver. I'm a big fan of trying to get these builds. I'm a big fan of getting an early quarterback and an early tight end because then you only have to take 2 at the position and just get more stabs to fire away. It just opens up the flexibility as to like whatever position the values are starting to open up. If it is tight end, then sure, maybe I'll take 3 tight ends, but I really do. It's kind of become my thing. Is like I really kind of want. You already mentioned after Kittle, it sucks. So I really definitely want a tight end by Kittle. Really in this round 4 to 5 range is where I'm most often going. And then quarterback. I really kind of want my guy in this like Stroud, Hurts. I mean, Hurts really fell. Wow, that's a nice value on Hurts. 44 there. Whew.
Yeah.
But I'm liking trying to get like a top 5 receiver, top 5 tight end, and then just stacking up the receivers and running backs from there because you get to play the value game a little bit more. I don't know. That's just a thought, but that's how I feel a lot of my teams have been going so far.
I mean, I don't know if that's like a strategy that's immediately applicable, just like filling out the starting lineup, but I think like there's individual strategies within there that will like lead you to that path, like you mentioned, grabbing an early tight end, grabbing an early quarterback. Like you can very easily find yourself with a filled out starting lineup. But I think, yeah, like I've been really focusing on just grabbing one of those guys before Kittle. And I'm comfortable with Jake Ferguson as my top tight end. I don't love it, but just given the offense there, and we talked about there's not a ton of options after. And Brandin Cooks is okay, but I mean, like he's on the latter half of his career. He's definitely on the downturn, and I don't think anyone fears Brandin Cooks as like a target earner or just like a super elite receiver. So I don't mind grabbing Ferguson, and they've always had the offense in Dallas has always utilized tight ends in the red zone on that a lot of you see those play action plays from the inside the 3 so often from Dallas and utilizing those receivers. So I don't mind grabbing him at all, but we're on the clock here. I typically, just like how our roster is setting up, would go grab our 4th receiver here, but not entirely sure because after that Christian Watson pick, I don't love the receivers that are left.
Yeah, and I don't love Christian Watson anyways. I do like Curtis Samuel. I know there's Keen Coleman. They're kind of duking it out there. I don't think Samuel's going to go. Jameson Williams is there. I like getting Moss or Mostert here, getting our 3rd running back. I like Moss myself, but I'm fine with Mostert too. And then we take whatever the receivers is there.
Sure.
Moss?
Yeah.
All right, let's do Moss. I have a ton of Moss. I have a lot of Zach Moss. I think the only downside to drafting Moss is like it's tougher to draft Chase Brown now. I don't mind having both Bengals backs, but I'm loving the value you can get on Chase Brown later too. But I think at least one of Jameson or Curtis makes it to us. I could have seen us going Jameson and Curtis there as well.
That definitely could have happened, and there goes Jameson.
Yeah.
But
I just think the running back upside is so much more. Like we're talking about filling out our flex here. I think there's maybe JMO hits a ceiling, and then that would have been higher upside. But I see Moss having very real 12 touchdown upside. Like I think that's a nice steady piece.
Yeah, and I view David Montgomery and Zach Moss in just kind of the same bucket. Like they've got
Samuel went brutal.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. This is an ugly set of picks.
It is. I don't mind getting a 4th running back, though, and getting Mostert or going Daniels and getting the quarterback we were just raving about. I don't love Mike Williams here. I don't know. What are you feeling?
Let's go Daniels, finish up the quarterback room, and I don't mind some of the later options for Washington pass catchers. So I think that's fine. Get a little Luke McCaffrey going, maybe some Sinot for our 2nd tight end, and I'm comfortable. Like we can just go two quarterback, 2 tight end. If we grab Sinot later, just queue him up, make sure we don't miss him, and I think we'd be pretty set. And I'm not super thrilled about our wide receiver room, but if we end up going 2 quarterback, 2 tight end, I mean, we'll be able to take some of those late round stabs and just hope one of them works out. So I don't mind that pick, and I think we're setting ourselves up for an all right build.
I think we're looking probably at a 2-5-9-2 at this point for sure. So we'll take 9 receivers by the end of this thing, and I really do. We talked about it on the last show, but in terms of like Jalen Polk, Jermaine Burton, there's a lot of rookies in that like 140 to 170, and then of course my boy Demarcus Robinson by the end of drafts. I would have. I mean, in hindsight, I think, probably would have rather just gotten one of the two receivers and then seen who of Moss and Mostert fell to us. I don't feel great about Mostert, though. And he fell to 103 here. I know he just had 20 touchdowns. The Jalen Wright pick, you know how I feel about Jalen Wright and how much of a value he is right now. And I just don't love taking both Mostert and Wright. So I don't know. I feel I do wish we had taken Samuel or Jameson here. But I am high on Moss, especially now Chase Brown goes at 110, so we wouldn't have had either Bengals running back. Like I want to leave every draft with at least one Bengals back, typically one Steelers back. Jalen Warren went just before us, though. But those are the backs that I just can't get away from. This will be interesting. Like, Jaden Daniels, I don't think a lot of teams are going to feel pressure to take Jaden Daniels when they already have Josh Allen. So I think this is going to be a unique build in that sense. And like you said, there's a lot of intriguing Luke McCaffrey's. I know you don't love Dotson, but I think this opens the door for Jahan Dotson in this 142 range. And I like Dotson. I think he could rebound.
I'm not. It's hard for me to get around on Dotson. I don't know. I'd much prefer to just get our stack off with McCaffrey. And where is McCaffrey going? It's got to be in the 14th, 15th round range, right? Yeah. Pick 180. So even later than that. So
yeah.
I'm
okay with it too. I'm not going to force Dotson on this squad, but 8 touchdowns or 7 touchdowns is a rookie on only 61 targets. Like there was an intriguing, I think he was ascending and got so cut off so fast that it's not fair to, we'll see who's there anyways.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we might not even have the chance to take him. So
yeah. I'm going to pull in our pick here and show you some guys I've queued up. I like Tyler Lockett here. I like TJ Hawk. I think Lockett's probably the pick here.
Lockett is the pick. Lockett's the pick.
So let's go him and then
Mr. ADP beater.
Yeah, it's exactly. And that's just a nice balance out. Like we've been waiting on receivers. That makes me feel a lot better about not taking Jameson and Curtis Samuel because I'd have Lockett in that same tier with them, and we just got him a full round later. Now we could complete another stack and get Khalil Shakir. We could consider TJ Hockenson. That's not – I don't mind that at all because, Kincaid gives us that nice little buffer period to when Hockenson gets healthy. And then if he's cruising in the stretch run, then we have just 2 elite tight ends alternating or potentially in our flex. Kind of like that. I mean, Gus Edwards, my love for the Gus bus, but I do like the 3 running backs we already have, so I don't feel pressured. All of these guys, there goes Hockenson, Dan.
Yeah, no hockey for us, but I think you got to go with just the Buffalo Bills Giga stack here and grab our guy in Shakir. You go Shakir over Gus? Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with our running backs, and I don't want 3 running backs from that bucket. I kind of got into it a little bit earlier, but that just bucket of guys that I just see them as just touchdown or bust, really. And obviously, like Montgomery and Moss, I think that they're on good enough offenses that I think that they can produce from a yardage perspective. But I mean, not really pass catchers. Maybe a catch a game by season's end, 2 catches a game. But those are 3 guys just in terms of their just profile and just how I view them as players. They're just the plotters. They're gonna get you they're gonna get you the RB1 weeks when they get 2 touchdowns. But last year I called David Montgomery the king of the RB2s, and that's exactly what he was. And he ended up being a value at his price, but that's really what all these guys are. You're hoping that they're the king of the RB2s because they score 10 to 12 touchdowns this season. And I like having one of those guys on my roster, but I don't really want 3 of those guys on a roster.
Fully understand it, and I wouldn't agree with you. I'd kind of throw Zeke into that plotter range as well, who goes at 126.
Zeke for me, though.
Yeah.
A little more receiving upside for Zeke.
You think what?
more receiving upside for Zeke, in my opinion.
Yeah, sure. He was a solid, not a great pass protector for the Pats in terms of pass blocking grade and whatnot, but just eyeball test wise, he was eating up receptions, eating up yards. I do like Zeke a lot. If we didn't have Josh Allen, he would have been another guy. I wouldn't have minded there at 123. I have a lot of Zeke in early drafts, so I'm still wary of like a Dameon Pierce or a Khalil Herbert going there, and they probably still would give Zeke the lead keys to start the year, but I could see Pierce or Herbert thriving in that power-based run game. Like that's definitely more of their skill sets than the offenses they've been in. So, I really like Khalil Herbert. If he ends up there, that's a guy kind of like stabbing right now at 186 because he'll be going 120s if he ends up with.
If he gets traded, yeah.
Yeah. So he's another one I've been trying to sneak into the late rounds. There goes Jalen Wright. Sadly, I was really hoping for him.
I had to do a double take there on Brian Robinson Jr. I thought that was Odell Beckham Jr. for a second. Seeing that long last name in the junior. Is he moving the needle for you whatsoever? I mean, he's going in a range that's essentially free. He's going right next to your boy Demarcus Robinson, so I'd imagine that he is a very hard click for you right now, just at his cost. But are you interested in him whatsoever? Going right around pick out 200, so basically free.
Odell, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better offense in terms of Miami.
Yeah.
Obviously, the target competition-wise, not a great situation when you're competing with hogs like Tyreek and Odell.
Yeah, super concentrated.
If something happens to either Waddle or Tyreek, though, there's a real path. I like Malik Washington a lot. I know how excited they were to get him, so that's also on the back of my mind. It's like, I don't know. It's not moving the needle much for me, but he did he didn't look bad for the Ravens when he was given the chance last year.
No. I mean, everyone was talking about like how he was going to be featured in that playoff push, but then he like never was. But yeah, I mean, I think Odell's best days are clearly behind him. I think there was a tweet going around. It was like Odell Beckham won 100-yard receiving game since 2021. Like it's not much. It's obviously not the Odell of old. We're on the clock here. Who do we got queued up here?
I queued up Wicks. I did queue up Dowdle. I know it's probably Zeke. I don't believe in Dowdle myself, but it could be a way to balance it out. But I do like Wicks and Lloyd in this range.
I'm fine to go Lloyd.
You want to go Marshawn here?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, let's go Lloyd. And then I wouldn't hate Wicks on the way back if he's still sitting there. We have 5 receivers, and I'd like to get to 9. And Wicks is one that moves the needle for me. But I am a big fan of Lloyd there. I was listening to Scott Barrett had his great his podcast where he breaks down the 150 hours of pressers in 50 minutes type of thing. And there were some interesting quotes about Lloyd. Some that we had already talked about, like a different flavor for us, intrigued by his receiving abilities. But then another one came out from Jeremy Fowler talking about how they see a lot of Aaron Jones in Marshawn Lloyd. And, have you seen that one already?
Yeah, that was kind of like the mental comparison that I was like kind of making right after the draft. It's hard not to. I mean, Lloyd wasn't involved as a receiver in college, like to the degree that you think because obviously, Aaron Jones, really explosive, talented as a pass catcher. So, the receiving production and usage from Lloyd in college doesn't translate to the level that we saw as Aaron Jones as a receiver. But, I mean, I think it's comparable enough that I think he can benefit from that role. And there goes Wicks, unfortunately. Is there any receivers you are any other receivers you're looking for in this range, or are you wanting to take the stab at Sanat?
I don't love Sanat enough.
Neither do I. Yeah,
I could see him force feeding. Are you completely out on Dowdle to balance out the Zeke share?
No, I'm fine with that.
I do like Polk, Wilson, and Burton. This is the range where I would like to get one of these rookies as well. So I don't know. I'm not a diehard, and we just took a running back. So you know what? Which of these 3? Polk, Wilson, Burton.
Wilson.
It ended up being Polk, of course.
That's okay.
We weren't ready for it. That's all good. Why don't we talk about those 3 receivers though? Because I don't think either of these other guys will make it back to us. But those are like those intriguing rookies that any of them could end up being featured in some big roles here. Let me just scroll down. So we had queued up Jalen Polk, Roman Wilson, and Jermaine Burton. So let's break those guys down. And we also had Rico Dowdle, but we passed on him. We had 4 running backs. We'll take a 5th round, Dylan Lobb or something, Lobby in the last round and wrap up our RBs. So yeah, of those 3, you said Roman Wilson was your first, like off the cuff.
I try to mix it up between Wilson and Polk because I mean you know what you're getting in Roman Wilson. I mean it's not going to be a really high passing volume offense, and I don't think it's going to be a great offense by any means. And they're going to want to run the ball first, and George Pickens is going to command a lot of targets. I don't think the ceiling is super high with Wilson. But I like the fact that I think he has a very realistic path to the slot role in Pittsburgh. And then I'm mixing in Polk because I just think the ceiling's higher. I wasn't as a fan of Polk just as a prospect as you were, but
I actually didn't love him as a prospect.
Okay.
So I'm with you there. Like I was kind of surprised when the Pats took him, but then there was a lot of talk that people had him as a round 1, like NFL guys had him that way. So, yeah, to me, that's just like the clearest path to a target hog role is him. Wilson's going to be behind Pickens. Burton is clearly behind T and obviously Chase, even though that upside is probably the highest if something happens to either guy. Plus, he's good in the slot there. But to me, Polk's the only one of those 3 that has, like, I could be the number 1 option on this offense.
Yeah.
I think if Drake May's the real deal, then that's real nice,
I mean, but also how much Drake May do we see in 2024? We brought it up on the last show, like some like very respected sources regarding the Patriots. I mean, think it's a realistic chance that we see 6 games out of Jakobi Brissett in 2024. So they've all got like pluses and minuses, and like in this range of the draft, obviously every pick's going to have flaws, but I don't mind mixing in. I'm not getting to a ton of Burton. We'll make our pick and then I can elaborate on that.
So yeah, I have queued up Dobbins if we want to try to dip into the Chargers running back, mess and buy him. I like Hunter Henry at this point for our second tight end. I think McCaffrey will be there on the way back at 170.
Yeah, I'm expecting McCaffrey to be there on the way back.
So who do you like of Henry or Dobbins?
I don't mind Henry.
All right. Yeah, I think that locks up a nice safe tight end too with some, again, banking on if May is the guy for a bit of this year. And if not, I mean, Brissett showed some decent things. Corley was another guy I did have queued there. I really like Corley. I like that Rodgers is already talking about being very excited about him. Doug was talking about, that clear after the catch role, that kind of Randall Cobb style role we've been alluding to and talking about as a rookie winner. So I like Corley, but he didn't make it to us. I do think this is a great range to snag. Ideally, McCaffrey makes it back to us. And then we get at least a little weaponry with otherwise naked Jaden Daniels right now.
Yeah.
I feel like we definitely want to get our share of McCaffrey. That will get us to 7 receivers, and my boy, DeMarcus probably the next round. I'm feeling pretty good. Like we built an interesting one here for sure.
It is not something that we're not accustomed to builds like this, but as long as McCaffrey's there for this pick, and I don't see, I would be pretty upset if he's not. But
he's the number 1 receiver still on the board. So if somebody just clicks receiver and wants to take the number 1 guy, I don't hate Javon Baker for what it's worth too. If McCaffrey did get sniped right now, I know we're loading up on Patriots all of a sudden, which is rarely. Oh my God, there goes
classic.
So we could wrap up with like Dobbins and wrap up our running back room, but the Achilles is still the Achilles. I mean,
I don't
Baker.
really want to get Dobbins. I'm fine with Javon Baker.
All right, yeah, I'll uncue him, and then this.
That is painful.
That is painful. I feel like he sniped us a couple times here. Tristan, please. Has definitely sniped us a few times in terms of he got both Samuel and Williams.
The 2 guys that we wanted.
About Nico, we were both excited might drop to us. He's building an interesting squad there. I don't like Quentin Johnson, but I can see why you'd bet on it. So I like what Tristan Please is doing there.
The Quentin Johnson stuff. I mean, he is just his just analytical profile, just like how he produced last year. He's just in a bucket of receivers that have just failed. Like he might be. I don't think it's crazy to say you should just completely write off Quentin Johnston already after 1 year. Like
I'm with you. I would totally agree, honestly.
Yeah, it's like maybe he has a career as like not a committed receiver, but just like a wide receiver 3, and like can produce here and there. But yeah, the round one, you will not live up to the round 1 talent.
No. One guy that often. So I'll just shout out a couple picks that like often in this range I go. So where we went Henry. Usually Marvin Mims is there. He went, this guy reached at the turn, and you have to if you like Mims. He's not going to make it back to you there at 180. Burton, Wilson. I don't get Michael Wilson here, just especially after they added Zay Jones. I don't see Michael Wilson doing anything right now.
No, I just realized I never finished my point on Jermaine Burton. It's so obviously there's opportunity there. The Bengals top 3 rate in terms of 3 wide receiver sets. Tyler Boyd confirmed not coming back. I didn't really think, but there was a chance maybe because he just hadn't garnered any really,
right.
He like didn't garner any interest from teams, so thought they could bring him back on a really, really cheap deal. But the Bengals are left without a slot receiver. But I really think that the only way Burton gets onto the field is like if they on the snaps where they bump Chase into the slot, and he did that from time to time last year. Like he runs routes out of the slot on a semi-regular basis, but Burton profiles to be an outside guy. I just don't, and T's going to stay on the outside, so I have a hard time seeing how he gets on the field unless Chase gets bumped into the slot, which obviously will happen, and I do think he gets on the field and Burton gets on the field when Chase is in the slot, but I just don't know how often it's going to happen. And this seems like more of a dynasty or keeper league investment where T is gone in 2025 and Burton's going to be their outside guy, their number 2 guy. That it seems like more of a long-term investment, but obviously the contingent value is absolutely massive. And T. Higgins has missed his fair share of games. He's not been on the field for 60% of the potential snaps that he could have been throughout his career as a Cincinnati Bengal. So it's a significant amount of time that he's missed. So, and it's not like he just like has these long-term injuries that's keeping him off the field. It's just like these little things that are keeping him off the field for 3 or 4 games in a row. So the contingent value could really be realized pretty quickly if T goes down, and Jamar has dealt with his share of injuries as well. So, I mean, there's a very realistic outcome where he ends up on the field, but unless one of those guys goes down with an injury, it's hard to imagine they put Burton in the slot. I just don't think there's much of a chance where that happens, and it's hard. And I just don't think he gets out there that often because I don't know how often they're going to put Chase in the slot.
Yeah, I'll come back to him. I say maybe this is where we take a stab at Herbert because he's likely to get traded. And I think even if it's not to the Cowboys, whenever he lands somewhere, his price is going to go up probably 10 to 20 picks. And if it's the Cowboys, it's like 50 picks. So
sure,
I'm a believer in the player. I think he always does well when he gets the shot. And I don't have a lot of him yet. So I just wanted to add him to my portfolio in anticipation of a trade right now.
And then we can get totally sniped on Demarcus Robinson on the way back.
Yeah, the way everybody, we've gotten sniped on every other player that we've ever wanted. I think we could pivot to Odell there. I'd be fine with that. It starts to get pretty ugly, but I like DJ Chark, which I know is not going to move the needle for you much. I like Jalen Tolbert late. I like Dylan Labe late. So there's still some guys.
Do you think they try
now? I mean, maybe we sneak him in.
A.T. Perry.
Zay Jones, though, right? Like,
yeah. To kind of change subjects, do you think they try to bump Treylon Burks into the slot, or do you think that's all Tyler Boyd?
They keep hyping up Burks like they have a big role in mind and stuff for him. I think they're trying to drum up his trade value.
That could certainly be the case.
I don't buy it for a second. And this is like where JJ McCarthy, it's like we already have, I'm not going to sneak in another QB because we have Allen and Daniels. But man, this is why I love going after Vikings. Like McCarthy at 195 is absurd value. My boy DeMarcus here, and then maybe Zay or Chark to round it out.
Yep.
All right, sweet.
I'm already kind of salivating at these Cardinal stacks that I'm about to pull off in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, but Zay Jones will come up, but like for right now, him in the last round is looking really intriguing. We talked about it earlier too when we were talking about the explosiveness of the Cowboys, but also the Lions. I know I said at the end of last show, but I kind of want to reiterate, like maybe it's not this; these aren't the areas of drafts to be going after it until we know more. But I still think there's going to be some upside to whoever's kind of that Josh Reynolds of this year. I'd be putting my chips on Donovan Peoples-Jones. I've seen him do it before. He can stretch the field. I know Khalif Raymond has also had some decent games when he's had to step up. So I think there's definitely a little bit of value there that nobody's drafting right now as a last round receiver. I just wanted to kind of reiterate that.
Yeah. So the only thing I lean towards Raymond being the wide receiver 3, just first off, obviously like saw not like 100% route share by any means, but like he saw usage throughout the season last year. He was on the field for a chunk of the snaps just about every single game. And so I think obviously like they have their ties to Raymond and he's been with the organization. So there's that. And then I feel like there's a lot of overlap in the skill set of DPJ and Jameson Williams, just like that field stretcher thing. And like obviously Jameson Williams, we would hope has a more diverse skill set than just a field stretcher, but I feel like there's just a little bit too much overlap. So I don't want to say too much overlap, but that overlap combined with the fact that Raymond produced for the Lions last year makes me lean towards Raymond being that third receiver.
He definitely could be. Absolutely. No doubt about it. And as we're getting towards the end here, Wolfpack, I haven't even done any type of promoting yet, but I will say if you're somehow watching this video and not on Underdog Best Ball, I think that would be crazy if you're tuned into the draft and haven't actually joined yet. But if that's actually you, by all means, please consider jumping in because it is so much fun. We're doing this every week for a reason. And use code RSJ. You can get up to $250 in bonus cash right now. The link is in the description as well of this video, but code RSJ or link in the description helps your guys out as well if you use our code as we continue to send referrals over to the best platform, in my opinion, for best ball. It's not even really close. We love Underdog, one of our favorite partners to work with for sure. As we're moving towards the end here, let me get back to this tab. So we have queued up Zay Jones, which could be interesting to start sneaking him in.
That's easy for me.
You definitely go Zay Jones over DJ Chark
every day of the week.
I don't know why it's such a lock to you. I mean, 5 touchdowns on a horrendous team last year.
It is 100% personal bias that I just do not like DJ Chark as a player whatsoever. It's definitely smart to like mix him in, I guess, but I have never been able to get behind DJ Chark.
I like them both. I mean, I love the Fields pick, by the way, there, 213.
Yeah.
And then goes, we were talking about Donovan Peoples-Jones never getting drafted. And maybe welcome home to him right now. Probably not. So you 100% want some Zay Jones, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And you want to do that over a running back, right? Like we could consider a 6 running back build here.
I like grabbing the 9th receiver.
Yeah, I do too. We have the 2 great guys at top, and then it's a little bit of a mess for how it's going to get filled in behind them. So, I like the 259 build. That's what we said we were probably going to do, and we did it.
I think we get pretty good CLV on Jones there. I see him coming up in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I could see him going into like 2 rounds earlier.
Yeah, nothing crazy, but definitely a bump, not a last round flyer.
Yeah, I agree. I think he starts for that team, and we've seen Zay have some huge days in the past.
Oh yeah. He had a couple hundred or at least close to 100-yard receiving game last year. Like he was on and off the field, but produced when after Kirk went down, he was able to produce.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so let's quickly review our team. We don't have any questions or comments. Love a Tyreek Debo start. Typically would probably have gone receiver here, probably gone Diggs in most of my drafts. But I like getting different with Allen. I think we ended up with enough pieces between Kincaid, Coleman, and Shakir here at 123 that we made it worthwhile. It made it, we got some nice Bills pieces. That this Bills team remains the, number 5 in points, number 5 in total yards, number 10 in passing yards. Like if that ends up being the similar offensive machine it has been, and it just gets concentrated to cheaper targets, and Coleman ends up being a Diggs light or something, but that's going to be real pretty. This team fails if Josh Allen just can't live without Diggs. Like I know we've talked about those stats where he was like a QB 10-ish type of guy without Diggs, but he's just such a different stage of his career. I think it's somewhere not even in the middle, closer to we're going to get most of what Josh Allen's been with maybe a slight downturn. I love Pacheco. Yeah. So I love our Bills stack so far. And I don't hate, we'll review our running backs in a sec, but like for having 9 receivers, I thought Lockett, 10 picks after ADP, again, stacked up our guys, got an interesting rookie in Polk, even if you wanted Rome more. Polk versus Baker, if one of our Pats guys pans out, nice. Wrapped up with a couple veterans that are unsexy, but will have a couple decent days for us. So I don't mind the 9 receivers, despite kind of avoiding the position after the first 2 till round 7. Not what I usually do by any means, but I think they panned it out okay, especially if one of these Bills guys works out really well for us.
Yeah, and it's hard to see Josh Allen like being a complete bust unless his rushing upside is taken away. I mean, like as long as they're still using him as a battering ram at the goal line, I really think he'll be okay. Like obviously it's a lot harder path to the QB1 without Stephon Diggs, but I'm still willing to take the bet. I mean, the dude has literally put up 4 straight seasons of top 10 fantasy performances of all time. Like, I mean, obviously the situation is different without Diggs now. He doesn't have his top receiver, but he was still doing it when Diggs was garbage at the end of last season. He didn't have a 100-yard receiving game after week 6. And they made a run into the playoffs, and Allen was continually producing as in terms of fantasy. And like, I mean, you can talk about Diggs like drawing attention away from other playmakers on the Bills offense, including Allen. But I mean, Diggs was a non-factor in several games throughout the back stretch of that season when they were winning a lot of football games. And Allen still produced from a fantasy perspective, and they won football games. So I'm not too worried about Josh Allen.
Me neither. And I think that's a great point. And one thing I wanted to write about, I'm trying to track it down. I have to reach out to a couple people at Underdog maybe, is for 2 years in a row, I've done the graveyard tournament, the mid-season tournament.
Oh, yeah.
In both years, I don't know the ADP because I can't find it anywhere, but I do know that Josh Allen was a top 7 pick both times in the graveyard. Yeah. And it just goes to show, it's like, yeah, I get it, quarterback opportunity cost and whatnot, but every single year he jumps 2 rounds by midseason because he's just been that valuable to everybody's teams in fantasy. You could look through your best ball rosters and whatever teams had Josh Allen were shooting to the moon. And it's especially true with like, I do believe that me and you you look at our sleeper show from last year, we had Kyron on there. We had, Tank Dell. We were crushing our late round sleepers, and you can't, I guess Bank done doing that every year, but I think more often than not, if you're pretty confident in your ability to outline these values, even like the mid rounds Moss, like I don't know. I'm feeling pretty confident in my evaluations of these like middle and late rounds right now that I love getting the hero QB. Now in this specific draft, the fact that like Hurts went to 44. I mean, it's not, I don't think Allen ever busts, but like, does he warrant going a full round ahead of some of these other guys?
Probably not.
At his best, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
It depends on what Allen we get this year. And so the only thing against going him, I guess, at 27 moving forward, like if we were going to do this draft tomorrow, I probably would switch Diggs in just because Allen has been falling to this like 33 to, I've gotten him in round 4 at like 39 before. So it seems like we're unnecessarily reaching. But then when you do it up here, Coleman doesn't fall to that bottom of round 9 anymore. You're not going to get – you might get Shakir. You're certainly not going to get Kincaid unless you reach really well. So I do think the only way to set up like an Allen with 2 to 3 weapons is to take him at the top of this round 1 range, and not a lot of teams are doing it. So it's a way to be different, and I like it. I don't know that I would swap Diggs and Allen right now on this squad. Like, I don't know.
It would have set us up to get McBride and a Kyler stack going, but I mean, you can debate that all day, like at cost, what's more valuable. But I mean, I'm not upset with it by any means.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like the way McBride fell, where if he's here at 51, this is Diggs. I'd say I don't switch Pacheco here. Pacheco late round 4, I'm hammering every time till further notice. I've been taking him like 40 where Jacobs went here, in some drafts. I love Pacheco.
Yeah. And then we go grab Kyler instead of Keon. But I mean, you can talk about it all day.
I see that. Because then you have 3 sick receivers. But that also assumes that Diggs, like you said, he was dusted by the end of last year as the number 1 for Allen. What is Diggs right now? He's now competing with Collins, Tank Dell, who anytime that Stroud can talk about his receivers, the first guy he brings up is always Tank Dell. I know that doesn't really necessarily equate to anything for fantasy-wise, but, it's never Stephon Diggs. And who knows what Diggs is at this point? And what if he's malcontent by midseason because Collins and Tank Dell have seen more targets and now he's throwing pissy fits on the fucking sidelines? And, I don't know. Diggs isn't this, guarantee by any means either. If Nico had been there, I don't think we would have even thought about Josh Allen. I am a little worried about Diggs. Maybe he is still Stephon Diggs and, it just flourishes with Allen for over half the year last year. And there wasn't I don't remember there being any significant injury reports, right? I don't.
For Diggs?
Yeah. Was there anything that came out he was playing with a bum hammy? I don't remember seeing
I don't remember anything. I mean, I remember last season, 2 seasons ago, there was stuff with Allen that hindered their production, but I don't remember anything this last season specifically.
Yeah, I don't know.
It is what it is. I think he'll still have his days. It's going to be a nightmare for redraft and just general managed leagues, but I think he's all right just because he's going to have his weeks on that offense. They're going to go nuclear, and there are going to be games where multiple of the receivers are high-end guys on a weekly basis or on that given week. So, I mean, I just you can't be fading guys in an offensive environment like that. So
no, I agree. Yeah, I probably go Diggs 7 out of 10 times over Allen there, but I'm happy to try something different. I think it worked out well with the stats. I'm looking here Montgomery, the only receiver I would have gone over him was Coleman just to ensure the stack, but Coleman still fell to us, so I feel fine about that. And I don't think Montgomery would have made it through this if they're going White and Stevenson. They probably would have gone Montgomery over him. One of our question marks was Zach Moss here over Samuel and Jameson, and I still question it a little bit, but not with the receivers. Who says that Curtis is a guarantee to be better than Shakir? Probably, but is it 2 rounds worth better? I don't know.
I lean towards Samuel, to be honest.
Oh, I absolutely do too. I like Samuel at his price, even though it is 2 more rounds. But there's a world where Shakir, he really kind of came into his own, including the playoffs last year.
He did.
I don't know. He could just be Josh Allen standover guy.
Didn't he have a 100-yard game down the stretch?
Yeah, he had a few. And then Lockett, as always, the ADP beater. This is the only last pick I wanted to highlight is Lloyd. This has kind of become in round 12. I'm going Jalen Wright or Marshawn Lloyd, whichever one's there. I want an exciting rookie speedster and an exciting offense, and that's Lloyd and Wright. So whichever one, I prefer Wright myself, but he was already gone. So Lloyd is a fine option there. I love getting one of those guys. Usually it says my running back 4. It might even be my running back 5 at that point, and I'm fine with it. I want one of Wright or Lloyd in every single draft. It doesn't matter who else is there or what my team construction is. I'm getting one of those guys in every draft.
I wrote about it a little bit. You can find it over at rotostreetjournal.com. We did our dynasty mock draft. I ended up with Marshawn Lloyd on my team a little bit early at the 208, but I
had the 210. Our boys.
I don't like. Josh Jacobs was straight up bad last year, just from an efficiency perspective. I mean, he had his weeks just because, he dominated the touches. So he got there some weeks, but he missed time. He was bad. He just all of his efficiency metrics are towards the bottom of the qualified running backs. So, and we've heard the rhetoric from Matt LaFleur, their GM, and just the offensive coaching staff. They want to get him involved. They like the talent. So I don't mind the Lloyd pick at all. If he can mix in, or if Jacobs goes down again, I think if Jacobs goes down, it'll be a split between Lloyd and Dylan. But I think it'll it'll still be meaningful enough work.
Yeah, 220 pounds, 4.46 40. I know Wright has that 4.39 speed, which is again why I lean to it. 4.46 is at 220 is no joke either.
Impressive.
And the zone blocking scheme that the gashing lanes, like I think it could be very interesting. It's not that I know that Lloyd's going to be a perfect fit for an outside zone scheme, but I do know when he sees space, he typically nice through defenses, and that's what a zone blocking scheme will give him. So, yeah, I'm all about it. I do wish, I mean, in hindsight, like maybe we do just reach on McCaffrey because we have a naked Jaden Daniels now, which it's a rushing quarterback. So, like, if I'm going to do a naked QB, I don't mind when it's a guy that we're kind of banking on their rushing production more than anything anyways, but it would have been nice to have a weapon attached to him.
It would be nice. It would be nice. But I mean, hindsight's 2020 at the end of the day. And yeah, like you said, with the rushing upside, as long as he gets there and stays healthy and just uses his legs like he did in college, I think he'll produce. And one last point that I didn't get to when we were talking about Daniels is he like that? I feel like every year we've got that polarizing rushing upside quarterback that isn't being drafted high enough or early in the offseason and then gets steamed up. And I think he's that guy. Like last year we had Anthony Richardson. Yeah, 2 years ago we had Hurts. And like obviously Richardson goes down, but it was looking like he was going to pay off. Do you think Daniels is that guy? Because there isn't really another guy with that rushing upside that is cheap right now.
Absolutely. 100%. There's nobody in this range with rushing upside after Richardson, and Richardson has the injury questions already. And I know Daniels comes in with some injury questions of his own, but
we got Kyler, but
yeah, there's nobody in. Yeah, Kyler has the rushing upside. You're right.
Yeah,
but nobody else. No, you're right. Like I think Daniels. I think he's going to get steamed into round 7 by the time August comes around. Even if it takes a preseason game and he rips off a 20-yard run, like that's all it takes. Or you just
that is all it takes.
Around. It's all it takes. Like we could get him in helmets and shorts in OTAs and just watch him run down the field. And you're like, oh yeah, remind you that this guy had absurd rushing production. He had better rushing production. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but Ian Hartitz, I think, was talking about it with Dwayne McFarland. Like his rushing, this is what the stat. I do have it at the top of my head. It was in college, Jaden Daniels averaged 4 more pure rushing fantasy points per game than Anthony Richardson. 4. Like that's 40 yards.
That's ridiculous.
So he and we're talking about Anthony Richardson that's going at 60 right now. Jaden Daniels had a better rushing career. And Richardson's more of a beast. He's got a more like physical specimen nature. So I'm not saying I'd rather have Daniels than Richardson. But 40 picks later, like that gap should certainly be closed. And I really do like. I don't like it naked. I wish we had something, but I really do like getting. We talked about it right before we draft. I want more Daniels. So even on a Josh Allen team where we're set at quarterback, and I typically, in the past would have just waited for a Will Levis, here at 169, or I wish Drake May knew was starting because I wouldn't have hated him, but we don't. I guess McCarthy, where at 190 would have been really nice too. But I don't know. I just, like you said, there's no quarterback after Kyler at 79 that has even close to the rushing upside. Jaden Daniels could have the best rushing quarterback season of anybody other than Lamar, and if Richardson stayed healthy, we could, and probably Josh Allen, of course, too. But like top 4, top 5 rushing upside already. And
I mean, I don't think anyone would be shocked if we're sitting here in December or January and Jaden Daniels leads the NFL in rushing for quarterbacks. I don't think that's like that far-fetched of a statement. I mean, like it'll take a lot, and it'll require this offense to be productive and high quality, but I don't think it's that crazy.
Not at all. And this is what Dwayne and Hartitz were talking about too. Is like, okay, so if we're projecting him for about 700 rushing yards, which again, top 12 in 15 to 16 years, all those metrics. And then you work in the fact that he has good weapons. He has the air raid offense under Cliff Kingsbury. Like there's a world where, all right, most times he's probably going 3,000 yards and 700 rushing. But what if he does throw for 37, 38? Now he's top 5 quarterback on the year, and it's beautiful. And that's the type of situation too. Like you could see a lot of teams advancing because of Josh Allen. Let's say Allen hits his ceiling. just like he always has. He's the 400-point quarterback. He's carrying teams into the fantasy playoffs. But just for 1 week, Allen is in New England. It's a snowy day. It's a gross day. He has 15 points, and all the Allen teams start to falter. But then that's the 1 week Jane Daniels runs for like 102 touchdowns, and like, that's a way to be
would
different.
Be ideal.
It would
be ideal.
It totally could happen. It really could. So yeah, I am not opposed at all. Even though we had Allen, like I was sad about not getting JMO or Curtis, but then I'm also like, I don't know.
It is what it is.
I'm really happy about getting Daniels there too. I'm. It might be a blessing in disguise. Like, who really brings more juice to our team, Curtis Samuel or Jane Daniels? I don't know.
Well, we'll have to revisit this roster at the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a fun one. This is a different one for sure.
Any closing thoughts before we get out of here? I think I've got out just about everything I wanted to say.
Yeah, me too. I think the only other guy, Khalil Herbert, again, in these late rounds, and when you're drafting early, the whole point's to try to beat ADP. He's another one that I could see. It says he's on the trade block. Everybody knows how efficient he is. So if a team's going to trade for him, there's likely a role somewhere. So I don't see a lot of situations where he gets traded and his price actually goes down.
Probably not. No.
So I think he's a fun
it's hard to fall from here.
It is. Yeah. 190.
Yeah.
And if the best case scenario is the Cowboys or maybe the Chargers, if he goes to one of them and then he rises 50 spots, it's great to be early right now. So he's another one I'm going to start boosting up. Like I have like Tyron Tracy, we know what he's going to be. And I've been drafting a lot of him, but that's not going to really change. Like it may be a couple highlights in training camp, boost him a tad, but like there's no running backs in this range that are on the trade block that have talent that could go to the Cowboys. I would say, I guess, Dameon Pierce, but I just don't know that the Texans are going to trade him because like they have Mixon and then no one else. So like,
exactly.
They can really afford to, whereas the Bears are a little crowded right now. So yeah, I'm intrigued. Like if the Cowboys made a move on Herbert, I'd be very, very intrigued.
He will be flying up draft boards for sure.
And if he's stuck in Chicago and the injury bug bites Swift as it always does, and Herbert makes a couple starts, he'll probably get in our lineup at some point.
Exactly.
So for 190, you can't ask for much more.
He's a guy in like a week or two.
I'm starting to feel a little bit better about that. I hadn't drafted. This might be my first or second time drafting him all year. So I'm going to try to bump that up now while I can, because I do think he's going to get traded. And even if not, I think he pays out 190 regardless. So yeah, that's my closing thoughts. Khalil Herbert, a very exciting way to head into the weekend.
Exactly.
But no, I feel great about it. I guess the last thoughts would then be check out rotostreetjournal.com, guys. Best ball rankings, all my tiers, all of it's free up there. All of our content's free on the site. Tons of best ball content, tons of dynasty content, all the good stuff. And of course, if you haven't signed up, please do consider using code RSJ or the link in the description to get up to $250 bonus cash on Underdog. It is the best place to be drafting. We'll be back Monday this week, Mo. Does that work for you? Monday, 4 p.m. We'll get our next draft on in. We haven't decided a topic, maybe late round guy. We're just hyping up Khalil Herbert and some of the late guys. So maybe we go at like we give like two of our favorite late round guys at every position or something like that.
Figure something out.
That could be a fun topic to talk about, is early best ball or guys that we could see rising, like something like that, like predicting the risers or late round picks, something of that nature would be fun. So hey, tune in on Monday and come find out whether we're talking about predicted risers or late round picks. But we'll spin the wheel and figure out what we're going to talk about then. But have a great weekend, guys. rotostreetjournal.com is where we breed and feed you fantasy wolves in a world full of fantasy sheep. Be those wolves, guys. Later.